it working the way that it was supposed to last week, because I have a better top-down camera. Hello. Hello. And we should have video to be able to watch while we do puzzles. So we'll watch videos. I'll pause them if I need to talk about them. But for the most part, we're going to be doing puzzle and video. So most likely you won't be seeing this view very often. This is my Chamber of Secrets poster that's signed by the cast, but fun little background. But we are going to be watching videos and doing puzzle. We started this last week, but the sound was the worst. And yeah, it was a holiday weekend and really didn't get a lot of people watching, which is fine. I just was having fun with the puzzle. As you can see, we got like a little bit done. We got the outside edges, which is great. Oh, well. As you can see, is we got a little bit done. Like the outside edges is really the biggest part that we got. But for the most part, we didn't get a lot done. And we had to end because technological problems. So let's just get started. While I'm working on the puzzle for the first little part, we'll talk a little bit about like things going on. We don't know why this is all pieced together. Yeah, we got last week we put out my ranking of the Harry Potter full cast audiobook, and also my 5th Dungeon Crawler Carl book review. Alright, so that's... I'm gonna try to... These have numbers and letters on them, and I'm gonna try to actually just sort them into, like, quadrant piles to try to, get things sorted to be able to work a little bit better. It's probably cheating, but it's on the puzzle. I can use it. Alright, so this is gonna be quadrant 4. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, yeah. So it's numbered 1 to 40, and then it's alphabetized from A to Y. So it's a 40 by 25 puzzle. So that's just what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be sorting puzzle pieces to be able to kind of solve the puzzle. And there are a couple puzzle pieces that I cannot see the letters on. So we'll have to bear with me on those. But yeah, so while I'm sorting that, we'll watch some What Culture video. All right, well, I have a playlist that I have curated of plot hole videos, and I'm going to play and pause and play as I have opinions on them. So if I'm not talking, the video is probably playing. So here we go.
What is a plot hole? Well, the Oxford Dictionary definition is a gap in or inconsistency in a storyline that goes against the flow of logic established by the story's plot. And internet nerds love them. They love them because there is nothing more fun than tearing into a beloved book or franchise when you found an inconsistency in the story. And Harry Potter, of course, as one of the most beloved works of children's fiction, is not immune to this criticism. In fact, fans have brought forth numerous accusations of plot holes in the Harry Potter series across the years, but J.K. Rowling, word of God herself, has come forward and answered a lot of those plot holes personally. With all that in mind, I'm Will from WhatCulture.com, and this is 12 Harry Potter plot holes that were in fact totally solved. Number 12, the Thestrals. As established in Book 5, The Order of the Phoenix, Thestrals can only be seen by people who have seen death, which is why Harry sees them and Ron and Hermione can't. However, Harry's actually seen many people die across the series before Book 5, including Cedric, his parents, and Professor Quirrell. So, what's up with that? Well, J.K. Rowling actually has a pretty good explanation for why this is the case. She explains that seeing Thestrals is not about just seeing death, it's actually about processing it. She highlights this with a quote saying,
See, I feel like this is kind of a cop-out for the fact that she just forgot to write the Thestrals. And it's like, oh, well, no, he just couldn't process the fact that Cedric died. And it's like, it's not a bad reasoning for it. It's just not a great reasoning. And it's just like, yes, it's not entirely a plot hole, but it's one of those things that it's like, it makes sense. Like, yeah, he hadn't processed yet. And it's like, it's not an instantaneous, oh, I saw someone snuff it. Now I can see a Thestral. We are never entirely told that's what it means. It just says if you've seen death, then you'll be able to see a Thestral. So it's kind of like, okay, so it depends on when you process, and yeah, she said process, but it kind of just, in her opinion, depends on when you're like, oh, that, now I get how I feel, because he was still in the grieving process. The steps of grief is, he kind of denied it. Like, he was still dreaming about it through the summer. And I know Carlin Brothers have kind of tried to answer this question with the whole, oh, well, what it is because his eyes were closed during the graveyard scene. It wasn't until he was seeing it through Voldemort's dreams that he actually experienced. And since he was there, it means he is actually seeing death at that point. And I'm like, okay, that makes a little bit more sense, but also at the same time, not at all. So I understand this reasoning, but also at the same time, not as much.
anyone who has suffered a bereavement knows that there is an immediate shock, but it takes a little while to fully appreciate that you will never see that person again. Until that had happened, I do not think that Harry could see the Thestrals. That means that when he goes back, he saw these spooky things. It sets the tone for Phoenix, which is a much darker book. So the answer is that when Harry's parents died, he was just too young to process the death, and when Cedric died, he saw the Thestrals too soon after Cedric's death to fully process that he was truly gone, hence why he couldn't see them. Number 11, Snape the Master Burglar. So, in Book 7, after Dumbledore's death at the end of Book 6, it's revealed that Mad-Eye Moody placed a whole host of enchantments upon Grimmauld Place to make sure Snape could never return there. These include a tongue-tying curse and a ghostly projection of Dumbledore. However, it is revealed that Snape did return to Grimmauld Place in order to take Lily's letter from Sirius's room. So, how did he do it? Well, J.K. Rowling has actually answered this one herself personally, stating, Snape entered the house immediately after Dumbledore's death before Moody put up the spells against him. It actually makes sense.
Alright, I haven't heard this as a plot hole that Snape just didn't set off the intruder alarms, but I think it was more of the whole idea that if he felt guilt, it would probably scare him off if Dumbledore showed up. But the thing is Snape didn't feel guilty for the death of Dumbledore. Not in that way. Like, he felt guilty, but, like, it wasn't a vindictive murder, so we don't really know what traps were put up for Snape to say, oh, well, he just broke in before Moody got there. So you're saying when he left Hogwarts, the first stop was to go to Grimmauld Place to, ransack it with the, worry that there are probably people from the Order there. I find that kind of hard to figure. So I'm gonna say that's not a good theory. It's just he could have gone in there. We don't know what the actual things. I assume it was just make him freak out, and maybe he would have left because he's like, oh, I can't go in there, you know.
Snape went directly to Grimmauld Place after the Battle of the Astronomy Tower in order to find a memento of Lily. Number 10, the Legilimency Conundrum. In the Order of the Phoenix, when Snape is teaching Harry occlumency, he makes a very clear point that legilimency is not about reading someone's mind like a book. Instead, you get brief flashes of the victim's thoughts and memories. However, in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, when we see Queenie employ legilimency, it very much appears like she is reading people's minds like a book. In response to this, J.K. Rowling merely pointed out that Queenie is just so much more...
Okay. I think there's a difference between reading minds and hearing thoughts. Like, I know it's very similar in the way that it sounds, but I definitely think there's a slight difference in how, like, yeah, reading minds, hearing thoughts. And she's a natural master legilimens. So is Snape. But Snape isn't even as good as Queenie. And I'm sure that's what he's going to say is, oh, Queenie's really good at being a legilimens. And it's like, yeah, she probably is. That's part of the whole thing is, she's a good legilimens. Maybe even better than Snape, but I think Snape is also a master legilimens. I really thought when he started talking about the legilimens problem, he was going to bring up a different problem, which is the whole idea that Snape goes, oh, yeah, the Voldemort cannot be lied to, but yet he can sit there and lie to him. And it's just like, oh, well, I didn't mean me, but it's like, no, Voldemort thinks he's a very good legilimens when in actuality he is not a very good legilimens. Well, he's good, he's just not the best.
naturally gifted at legilimency than Snape. Snape had to work with a low level of natural talent and work very hard, whereas to Queenie, it just comes so easily and she can read people's minds almost like a book, although she is not infallible. Number 9. Why did the Blacks own a Muggle world house? It's a simple point, but a fair one. If the Blacks are so notoriously anti-Muggle to the point of extremism, why on earth would they choose to live in a house in the Muggle world? J.K. Rowling actually answered this one in an exchange on Twitter, stating that a Black ancestor coveted the beautiful house, so persuaded the Muggle occupant to leave and put the appropriate spells on it. Apparently, appreciation of fine architecture is enough to even let the Black family, notorious Muggle haters, live alongside Muggles.
I think this is a stupid just question in general. Like, oh, why do the Blacks have a Muggle house? It's like, maybe one of the ancestors was just like, hey, I want a house here. And because it's not, I mean, we only know that there's one wizarding village in the wizarding world, which is Hogsmeade, like in England. Everybody else, even Godric's Hollow, isn't fully wizards. It's a mix. And it's a good house in London, so it makes sense that there is the Blacks had a house in London because it's close to the Ministry, it's close to St. Mungo's, because I don't think they would want to burden themselves with trying to transport themselves to places. They want to walk the streets and look down upon the muggles. Some of these plot holes are kind of just silly in the fact that they're just nothing.
Number 8. How did Voldemort get his wand back? As the main cast of the Harry Potter books prove again and again, breaking or losing a wand is not at all a rare occurrence in the story, so it seems incredible that Voldemort would manage to get his hands on the exact same wand he lost at Godric's Hollow 13 years previously. We never find out exactly how in the books, but after the fact, J.K. Rowling did reveal that it was returned to him by a dutiful follower, quoting that Wormtail, desperate to curry favour, salvaged it from the place it had fallen and carried it to him. I admit it would have been a bit of a feat for a rat, but they are highly intelligent creatures. So it was Wormtail who actually found and returned Voldemort's wand. Number
All right, so this is one of those ones that I see all the time. Is like, okay, so Wormtail found the wand, um, and then decided to return it to Voldemort. But it's one of those things. It's like, okay, but what's it matter? Like, because they're like, okay, so why was Wormtail there to begin with? And I think Super Carlin Brothers have kind of answered this in the whole idea of, oh, well, not Super Carlin, Peter Pettigrew answered the door for Voldemort, but we see the scene and Pettigrew is nowhere to be seen in that scene. So I don't think it's that. I think maybe he had just, saw, like, went with him maybe and saw that, oh crap, my master died. I'm gonna hide his wand because I might need it later to, like, cover up the whole thing. I don't know. I mean, I kind of always pictured it as if it were Voldemort knew he could take over animal bodies. So Voldemort was able to take over a body very quickly and hide his wand, maybe. But I don't know. It's also like, how did Sirius get his wand back? Unless, like, when you're arrested or wands are just returned to family members, and I'm sure Voldemort had a house of some sort, but you would think that the Ministry would be like, we should probably hide one of the most powerful Dark Wizard's wands. But they also did a lot of stupid stuff in general, so I'm just saying. There's a lot of weird things, and it's like, they're more inconsistencies than I would say plot holes.
7. Why wasn't Truth Serum used on secret Death Eaters? In the Harry Potter world, a truth serum exists called Veritaserum, which forces the taker to speak the truth. This seems like it would have been an incredible useful asset to the Ministry of Magic when interrogating Death Eaters who claim to have been under the Imperius Curse. However, we never see it being used in this capacity, so why not? J.K. Rowling actually did confirm that the Ministry uses Veritaserum, however it is in no way infallible because skilled Death Eaters carry antidotes with them at all times, and also skilled practitioners of occlumency can resist the effects of the potion. Number 6. Hermione forgets.
Alright. Now, this is an interesting one. It's, why is the Ministry not using it? And it's, oh, well, skilled Death Eaters would carry antidotes to it. It's like, yeah, but wouldn't you, if you were going to interrogate them because you thought they were a Death Eater, you would search them. I think, if you are an Occlumens, you can get through, the effects of Veritaserum. Like, I think that's really part of it, is it's like, if you are an Occlumens, you can get past it. But you also aren't just going to start telling every secret. If somebody gives you an answer, you can give them a non, or if somebody asks you a question, you can give them a non-answer. Like, did you kill that man? Well, I didn't not kill him. At one point he was alive, and then another point he was dead. That doesn't mean I did it. I could have done it, but that doesn't mean that I did do it. And that's like if you are skilled at being able to twist truths, you could probably get around Veritaserum. Like, I'm not good at it, as you can clearly see, oh, he was alive, and then he wasn't alive anymore. Yeah, that's a really bad lie. That's not how you get out of lying, but telling the truth. So, do not take advice from me about getting out of truth serum.
Memory charms. In Book 7, after Harry, Ron and Hermione escape Bill and Fleur's wedding to London, they're attacked by 2 Death Eaters and perform memory charms on them. At this point, Hermione says she's never actually done a memory charm before, which doesn't actually make sense, seeing as mere pages before, she said she charmed her parents to forget she ever existed. In fact, as J.K. Rowling confirmed, Hermione didn't wipe her parents' memories at all, which is why she's able to undo the enchantment later. Instead, she bewitched them to believe they're entirely different people to the people they truly are. Number 5. How was Quirrell?
So this is another one. It's like, oh, I don't know how to do memory charms. And it's like, didn't you alter your parents' memories? And it's like, well, she altered them. She didn't get rid of them because she was... There's a difference between completely wiping their memory and implanting false memories within their mind, which is a big difference, making someone believe that they are someone else. What's up, T? Is different than just, wiping 6 hours away from their memory. So it's one of those things that it's just like, yeah, they're different. Obliviate is different than whatever memory altering charm that she gave her parents. So that's it. It's not like it's a huge thing. I don't know why people were like, well, but she doesn't know how to do memory charms? Wow. How's it going, T?
Quirrell corrupted. At the end of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, it's revealed that Quirrell is actually being used as a vessel for Voldemort's disembodied soul. However, the question remains, how did Voldemort, weak and powerless as he is at this time, manage to corrupt Quirrell in such a way? He couldn't exactly have threatened him with violence or magic, so what gives? Pottermore actually reveals this in great detail in a backstory on Quirrell's life. J.K. Rowling notes that Quirrell felt inadequate and wished to prove himself and developed an initially theoretical interest in the dark arts. Like many who feel themselves to be insignificant or even laughable, Quirrell had a latent desire to make the world sit up and notice him. So Quirrell actually set out to deliberately find Voldemort in the hope that he would learn skills to ensure he was never laughed at again. Voldemort possessed him because he was weaker, made him a temporary Horcrux, and of course ultimately left him to die. Number 4. Wormtail.
I mean, some of these are really bad in the questions that they ask. They're like, I've never thought, oh, how did Quirrell decide he was gonna be corrupted by Voldemort? It's like, well, no, he was afraid of a lot of things and then decided to go after power. Voldemort took advantage of his, quest to seek power and not be weak, and manipulated him into like, hey, if you come with me, I will make you powerful. I will give you as much power as you want, but you just have to support me. You may die. And that's a risk I am willing to take, but if you succeed, you will have more power than you have ever dreamed of. Okay, the guy who's afraid of everything will probably go with the evil villain, when he's trying to search for power. Um, I'm doing good, just got off work early, waiting for my appointment. All right, well, I hope everything's all right with you if you have an appointment, whether it be a doctor or anything, but, that's none of my business. But I'm glad that you are here. It's been a little while since you've been I mean, I've had one stream since the last stream that you were on last week, which was me trying to do this, and it did not work very well. All right, let's see how he gets out of Wormtail in the Marauders map. This one frustrates me a lot, I already can tell. I am good, D, I am good.
And the Marauders map. Seeing as the Weasleys owned the Marauders map through years 1 to 3, how come they never realised that a guy called Peter Pettigrew was sleeping in their brother Ron's bed? Seems a bit unusual, maybe something that might deserve investigation. Once again, the Word of God comes in with an explanation. J.K. Rowling states that it would not actually have mattered if they had seen Pettigrew's name. Unless someone was very familiar with the story of Sirius Black, Fred and George would be unlikely to know or remember that Peter Pettigrew was the person Sirius had supposedly murdered. Even if Fred and George had heard the story at some point, why would they assume that the Peter Pettigrew they occasionally saw moving around the map was, in fact, the man murdered years before? Fred and George used the map for their own mischief making, so they concentrated, naturally enough, on those portions of the map where they were planning their next misdeeds. And finally, you must not forget that there are hundreds of little dots moving around the map at any given time. Fred and George did not know everyone in school by name, so a single unfamiliar name was unlikely to stand out. It still doesn't resolve the issue of Ron sharing a bed with a bloke called Peter, but it's as good as we're going to get. Number 3. How
All right.
was
Like I said, this is one of those ones, and I mean, he basically answered it in the way that I would answer it. Let's see. Oh, I didn't know you were having a stream last week. I didn't catch you. Well, last week was a bit chaotic and exhausting. Yeah, it was on Memorial Day, and my internet was crap. My camera was crap, and I got a new camera just for this, because I am gonna eventually also try playing Harry Potter board games on here. Um, so I wanted something that can give me a top-down view that I can play games on. Um, but yeah, back to this theory. The whole idea is it's a very common sense thing. It's, Gryffindor Tower has a bunch of boys living on top of each other, and it makes sense that you're not going to be able to look at a specific name, and Fred and George aren't going to be looking at the Gryffindor Tower anyway, because they're doing stuff other places. I don't think this piece goes here. Oh, this was the right number. We're just gonna put it right here in that pile. I'm almost done with this tiny little pile. All right, let's go. And I mean, it didn't not go well. It just, being a holiday weekend in a small town, it really doesn't do well internet wise. Yeah, there's quite a few actually. One of my favorite, the one that I play a lot, is the Battle for Hogwarts. Um, it is a cooperative deck building game that just kind of builds upon each level. Um, it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. I play it with my wife. We both enjoy it, and we will literally spend full weekends. We'll come home on Saturday night, we'll start playing, and we will play until Tuesday morning before we have to go back to work. It's a fun game. I enjoy it a lot, and apparently Mina Lima is about to come out with a new game. They just dropped it on Kickstarter. Pre-orders haven't started yet, but you can bet that I will be pre-ordering it and I will be playing it on this table. Um, I was wondering what you're doing. Um, it's a puzzle. This isn't a Harry Potter board game. This is a puzzle. The puzzle in question is this. It is the Hogwarts Legacy uh cover art. Um, so I'm just right now I am sorting the pieces out because there are 4,000 pieces, 1,000 pieces. I had a 1,000 piece puzzle, and I am not good at puzzles, so that's why we're talking and doing this. So yeah, I am sorting the pieces out into quadrants, and then we're gonna start working on it. Yeah. So back to how was Draco free after becoming a Death Eater? Because he helped Harry? I don't know.
Draco free after becoming a Death Eater. Though he shows some remorse at the end of the Deathly Hallows, Draco admittedly did commit some pretty atrocious crimes across the course of the books. These include cursing and poisoning fellow students in his attempt to murder Dumbledore, as well as letting Death Eaters into Hogwarts, which ultimately resulted in Dumbledore's death. So, how come Draco and his father weren't arrested at the end of the Deathly Hallows? They were Death Eaters after all. Well, Rowling's answer for this fits in with what we know of the Malfoys and their stunning gift for self-preservation. She stated that the Malfoys weaseled their way out of trouble again due to the fact they colluded, albeit out of self-interest, with Harry at the end of the Battle of Hogwarts. So basically the Malfoys got away with it because they changed sides at the very last moment. Number 2, how...
I'm not really sure how that's a plot hole. Honestly, that's my biggest complaint with Cursed Child on it, like, for real, is that how is Malfoy complaining that Harry has destroyed his life when in fact, if it weren't for Harry, the Malfoys, him and his father, and probably his mother, would have been in jail. Like, it's... Oh no. Oh, it's thanks to Harry that, he has a life. So, I mean, it makes sense. Harry was probably like, listen, you were very much the reason I'm still alive, because if it weren't for you hesitating on, I don't know if that's Harry or not, uh, they probably would have lost. So, yeah. I understand why the Malfoys were free, and Harry probably was a big proponent in freeing the Malfoys.
did Regulus Black discover Voldemort's secrets? Voldemort is incredibly defensive about his Horcruxes. In fact, they are the most precious thing to him in the entire world, as they are his tie to immortality. So how on earth did Regulus Black, a lowly Death Eater, manage to uncover Voldemort's secrets? Although it's never answered directly in the books, Rowling did offer this explanation. Horcrux magic was not Voldemort's own invention, as is established in the story. Other wizards have done it, though never gone as far as to make more than one. Voldemort dropped oblique hints. In his arrogance, he did not believe that anybody would be clever enough to understand them. He did this before Regulus, and Regulus guessed correctly what it was that made Voldemort so convinced that he could not die. So, in short, it was Voldemort's own arrogance as well as Regulus's intelligence which ultimately undid the Dark Lord.
This is also a weird thing. It's like, I mean, you could also just say that Voldemort, while thinking Kreacher was going to die, villain monologued. Because what better person to monologue to than a creature that you think is about to die? Ah, Kreacher, you house elf. Did you know I'm immortal? I've created countless Horcruxes, and nobody will be able to defeat me. You'd have to find all of them, and destroy all of them. I think part of the problem is Harry and Hermione and Ron just didn't ask the right questions. This is also one of those weird things. I'm like, I've never questioned how Regulus figured out it was a Horcrux. Like, I'm sure Creature came and told him, and he was like, "Oh, okay, all right, put it in there. I figured out you're a Horcrux." And by the time you're reading this, it's probably destroyed. I also find it weird that Creature couldn't have apparated Regulus out, but he was following orders. So, all right, what's the next one? Why didn't the Basilisk Venom kill the Horcrux and Harry? Because the Phoenix healed both of them.
Number 1. Why didn't the basilisk venom kill the Horcrux in Harry? As established throughout the story, one of the only things that can destroy a Horcrux is basilisk venom. This is why the Sword of Godric Gryffindor can be used to destroy Horcruxes, because it absorbed the properties of the venom when Harry stabbed the basilisk. However, Harry was himself bitten by the basilisk, which would have resulted in the venom entering his bloodstream. Would this not have been enough to kill the Horcrux? Basically, the answer is no. That is not enough to destroy Harry's Horcrux. This is because to destroy a Horcrux, it has to be damaged beyond any kind of magical repair, and seeing as Harry was actually saved by Fawkes' tears, so too the Horcrux was saved. Had Harry died, the Horcrux would also have perished, but because he didn't, the Horcrux remained alive inside him. And there you have it, folks, 12 Harry Potter.
Most of these were absolute garbage. I hope some of the other videos that I picked are better. This is a very old video, and I think they were just trying to find things to fill in a 20-minute video of some sort. But, like, it's literally explained in the book. Like, hey, you have to destroy the container to be able to destroy the Horcrux. So since the container wasn't destroyed, the Horcrux also wasn't. It's pretty self-explanatory, if I do say so myself. But anyway,
Potter plot holes that were actually solved. Don't forget to leave a comment with your own thoughts down below, and like, share, subscribe, and visit whatculture.com for daily news and articles. I'm Will for What Culture, and thanks for watching.
All of a sudden, people are beginning to talk about J.K. Rowling more like she's George Lucas than J.R.R. Tolkien. After heavily revising and fleshing out her own lore over the years, including with the huge information dump that is Pottermore, she's now releasing material that directly contradicts things she's said or written in the past. It's all well and good adding the details that Dumbledore is gay or Nagini used to be human, but when you start rewriting things to create plot holes in your own beloved material, there is a problem. That counts doubly when those stories were already full of plot holes in the first place. Oh, Icarus, you really did fly too close to the sun without a phoenix or whatever works. So ready your wand and put on your sorting hat as I'm Ash from What Culture, and these are the 13 worst plot holes in Wizarding World movies. 13. McGonagall at Hogwarts. McGonagall is at Hogwarts in the 20s? When fan service goes wrong, it is not a pretty sight. Particularly when it's thanks to a writer not paying attention to their own details, which can only be assumed to be the case with the plot hole opened by Minerva McGonagall's cameo in The Crimes of Grindelwald. We see her briefly at Hogwarts and she appears to be around her mid to late 20s or so, which makes absolutely no sense. She's appearing as a teacher at the school in 1927, despite the fact she was born in 1935, which is according to the bio now mysteriously obliviated from Pottermore, and didn't start teaching at Hogwarts, in her own words, until 1956. And before you say it might be a different McGonagall, the script even confirms that it's her. What is going on? 12. How does Expecto Patronum...
no, this is just the fact that the Fantastic Beasts movies are garbage. I think most of these are going to be, hey, this is answered in the book kind of question. So it's kind of one of those weird things that, granted, this question is not just a movie only. But yeah, no. Professor McGonagall should not have been in Fantastic Beasts. So, like, I will agree that is a glaring inconsistency in the material. But all right, next one.
Ronan work on a boggart. We know that the only way to defeat a boggart is to spell ridiculous and resulting laughter. So how come in The Prisoner of Azkaban, Professor Lupin uses a boggart to train Harry to use the Patronus charm? At that point, Harry's crippled by his fear of the Dementors, so it makes sense that he'd benefit from some immersion therapy, but there's a problem. Using a Patronus simply wouldn't work. The Patronus charm would have no effect on a boggart since it's entirely the wrong spell, and yet the boggart in that form is defeated when Harry successfully casts one. So, what gives here? 11. The Blood Oath. The introduction of the Blood Oath between Dumbledore and Grindelwald in the...
Who said that a Patronus wouldn't work on a boggart? I mean, it doesn't work on a boggart, but we see in the books that Harry's Patronus was able to run down and knock over the Slytherins during the Quidditch match. So it's like, I don't understand why this is also one of those points where it's like, why is this a question? Like, I never questioned why. If anything, the question would be, how does the boggart have the effects of a Dementor? Like, how is Harry reliving his worst memories when it's not a real Dementor? Because even in the fourth book, in the maze, he comes across a Dementor boggart and he uses Patronus on it, and it just kind of makes the boggart stumble. And he's like, wait, Dementors don't stumble. There's a boggart. And that's it. That's how he defeats it. So, like, it literally is in the book that, it works. So maybe that's why it's a movie theory. And honestly, any of the Fantastic Beast plot holes are just kind of dumb because it's a poorly written movie series, unfortunately.
Fantastic Beasts sequel is a great way of making Dumbledore's reluctance to fight his former friend and possible lover not only about his residual feelings for him. It added a little more logic, establishing that the oath strictly forbade Albus to take up arms against the Dark Wizard. But when exactly did they take the oath together? The fact is, because of the three-way duel between the pair in Aberforth that led to the death of Ariana Dumbledore, the oath has to have been made after Ariana's death. Otherwise, they could have never fought in the first place. However, after the duel, they weren't exactly on speaking terms since Ariana was dead and Grindelwald immediately fled the country, and they didn't talk for decades. So when the hell did they do it? 10. Why wasn't Neville affected?
Okay, so we hear about the duel that Ariana had more from Rita Skeeter. Even Aberforth was like, well, they were arguing, and then, there were spells casted, and it's just the existence of Fantastic Beasts is a plot hole in itself. Yes. I think Fantastic Beast is canon to the movies, not to the books. Like, you cannot assume that the movies and the books are canon into themselves, and we've talked about this in videos, is the movies are not canon to the books. The movies to themselves, yeah, that's fine. They're canon to themselves, and I think Fantastic Beasts can also be canon to the movies, but it cannot be canon to the books. I think some of the ideas from the movie are canon to the books, like the whole idea of Ariana Dumbledore being an Obscurious, which does change the context of the final fight, because we hear that Ariana wanted to stop them from arguing, and somebody shot spells and she ended up dead. Whether it be Dumbledore, who was trying to stop Grindelwald from hurting Ariana, or it was Grindelwald who was trying to dispose of Ariana. So I think in a defensive way, like maybe Grindelwald shot a spell and Dumbledore tried to deflect it, and it may have hit Ariana and killed her. We're not sure. We don't know anything about it because that was not what was covered in the series. So Yeah, it's Fantastic Beast first. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Perfectly good movie. I think it worked. It stayed within canon. It didn't really cause any problems. And then Crimes of Grindelwald came out and caused a lot of issues.
By the Dementors like Harry. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, the first time we meet the Dementors is designed to establish them as a major secondary threat in the film series. To accomplish that, we got to see the torment they immediately caused in Harry as a result of him merely being near one. He passed out because of them dialing into his past trauma more than the other kids. If that's the case, how come Neville didn't react exactly the same way? He too watched his parents suffering an unforgivable curse and would have had plenty of trauma since they were tortured to the point of dementia, and yet his emotional wounds didn't result in him passing out. Surely, given their similarities, you'd have thought J.K. Rowling would have wanted to draw a closer parallel. 9. The Obliviate.
All right. It is never I see it as canon that the Death Eaters broke into their house, the Longbottoms' house, and the Longbottoms were tortured in their house. But there is never any statement saying that Neville was there when his parents were tortured. Never. There's never a point. Granted, I have made a theory in myself where I talked about that, Neville had his memories altered, erased from a young child because he shows the symptoms: being forgetful, being clumsy. Those are all symptoms of having your memory wiped. And so when he finally sees the spiders being crucioed in Mad-Eye Moody's class, it's the point where some of those memories start to break through, and that's when he starts to become his normal self, basically. So it's just kind of one of those little things. It's like, it's never stated in the book, because Frank and Alice were R's. Technically, Frank was an R, Alice was his wife, but then it was retroactively changed to Frank and Alice were R's, and they could have been on a mission to try on their way to hunt down known former Death Eaters when they were ambushed and attacked and tortured. But I do think just because Neville may have been in the house when they were tortured, if it was that point, he may not have been directly in the room while they were being tortured. So that's my thing on it. Let's see. I think a lot of what happened with the second and third film was on the studio not rolling. No, I know. I'm not blaming Rowling for the Fantastic Beast series. I think with the Warner Brothers was kind of in a mess during that point. You got to think they had Johnny Depp, who in the middle of them filming Crimes of Grindelwald kind of had his whole Amber Heard trial. Then Secrets of Dumbledore, you get Ezra Miller going through his whole issue, and they also had to recast Johnny Depp. So it was just a whole weird mess that they had to fix, but also just you also had the actress who played Tina. She was sick for the entire filming of Secrets of Dumbledore. So, and I think partially during Crimes of Grindelwald. So they had to change the story to try to fit all of that in as well. To fit, hey, why is she not here? Kind of thing. And they had to bring in new characters and, change a lot of stuff. And it was just, there's a lot of behind the scenes things that I think we will probably find out in years to come of like, hey, look, this is why this series failed. But even the script books were garbage. Like they're very much the same thing. They do answer few questions that are asked that aren't answered in the movies, but for the most part, the script books don't actually do anything better, and they kind of piss me off because of the fact that the first two had really nice art, I believe, from Mina Lima, and then the third one is not only not the same size as the first two, but also just a totally different style of book. Like, it was like, who thought this was a good idea? This is why I like waiting until book series are fully complete before I purchase them, because I want all of them to look the same. Like the Hunger Games series, there is a sprayed edges like collector's edition that came out, and they put it out as individual books, but also box set. And then immediately came out with Sunrise on the Reaping, like a month after they released that. And I was just like, this bothers me because I know they're not releasing Sunrise on the Reaping in this style. And by the time they get to the point where they would release it in that style, they're going to be on to like four new styles of that series. But that's just a complaint on me. All right. The Obliviate doesn't take.
The entire mass Obliviate sequence at the end of the first Fantastic Beasts has some serious issues, but the most concerning is the fact that it doesn't even work. There's something to be said about the idea that love is so powerful that it stops Obliviate from working on Jacob properly when he's cleansed by the rain, but it's never established nor referenced again. In the sequel, we're told that the poison spread by Frank only makes you forget bad memories, but that's not true, because we see at the end of the first movie that Jacob has made baked creatures from his retained memories, including an Arumpent which basically tried to have sex with him. Surely he'd have forgotten that. 8. The Niff.
Alright, this one's dumb. It literally answers it. It only erases bad memories. He had a boring life where all he wanted to do was bake treats, and he couldn't even get the money for that. Like, and then he met Newt and his life changed. Of course, like, even the worst memories in that are still going to be good because his life was boring and he probably had a lot of trauma from trench digging during World War One. I mean, I don't know about you, but I feel like if World War One are my memories, being chased down by an Arumpent is probably not going to be one of my worst memories.
The magic conundrum. In Fantastic Beasts 2, Newt reveals another use of the Nifflers, showing that you can use gold to get the creature to map a crime scene, establishing what exactly happened, so the detective can then track anyone involved. It's clever, and it's pretty key to the Crimes of Grindelwald plot. But where was this magical ability in the future when Sirius Black was wrongly accused of killing Peter Pettigrew? Wouldn't a lot of hassle have been saved if someone had got a Niffler in to map the crime scene and reveal that Black killed no one and Pettigrew escaped? It's sloppy, and now it means we're gonna have to see the Nifflers all killed off to extinction for it to make any sense. Poor Niffler! 7.
I'm probably missing something from that. But, so, were they saying that in Crimes of Grindelwald, when he does the whole, figuring out what was happening, like what had happened there, it was the Niffler's magic that did that? I didn't pick that up in the movie at all. Like, okay. Maybe I just haven't watched Crimes of Grindelwald enough to understand it. I think I've only watched it like 3 times. So, that might just be me. I may just have missed that, but I've never questioned it. Alright.
Harry and the Thestrals.
I think we've already talked about this one, but we'll see.
A lot has been said about Harry's inability to see the Thestrals before Cedric's death during the Triwizard Tournament, and J.K. Rowling has even qualified how he's able to not see them. According to her, he hasn't processed Cedric's death by the time he boarded the carriages at the end of the Goblet of Fire, so couldn't see them, and he'd not consciously seen his parents die, so he could be unaffected. But that doesn't close the plot hole at all, because Harry witnessed an even more traumatic death than a half-witnessed one or Cedric's. He witnessed one caused by his own own hand, that of Professor Quirrell. At the end of the first book, Harry kills what's left of the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher by touching and melting his face. It's a heinous moment for any child to go through, and the suggestion that he wouldn't have processed that in the years following is just ludicrous. Given that it's related to Voldemort, he probably thought of little else. 6. Queenie falls for...
He didn't actually kill Quirrell. Like, this is one thing that it drives me nuts when people like, well, Harry murdered someone in his first year, and it's like, yes, in the movie, but it wasn't even the fact that it was him. It was Voldemort leaving Quirrell's body, which killed Quirrell, and Quirrell died in the hospital wing. Quirrell did not die in front of Harry. And of course, at the time of the filming of the first movie, only 4 books had come out. The Thestrals did not exist at that time, so they probably didn't even think, maybe we shouldn't have this character try to murder Harry and then die in front of him. Yeah. Probably a good idea. So, yeah.
Grindelwald's tricks. Queenie can literally read what anyone is thinking and feeling at any time. She could never be killed by anything willful, in other words, and could reveal all strategy to anyone seeking to use her gift to protect themselves. That's why she's so important to Grindelwald and why he actively seeks to seduce her into his service. But it's also why she shouldn't have fallen under his influence at all. The suggestion that Queenie's rage at her sister and Jacob abandoning her led her to him and cloud her mind is just stupid. Queenie should have been able to read the fact that Grindelwald was lying to her from the first moment he misled her into thinking he was making a world where she could marry Jacob. It just makes no sense that she'd miss that when she picks up on such things as involuntary thoughts by Jacob. 5. Why does Dumbledore...
I mean, we've talked about this. Voldemort was a master legilimens, but Snape was able to get past his lies. That, just because you're really good legilimens doesn't mean that your ability is foolproof. That's a really silly excuse, in my opinion. But, yeah. I did think it was stupid to have Queenie be the one who goes, I'm gonna follow Grindelwald because he's gonna be the only reason that I can be with Jacob. And it's like, which does actually make sense for the idea of the story, because in America in the 1920s, there was a law that basically prohibited witches and wizards marrying muggles or nomage or nomagique. So it's kind of one of those things. It's like, yeah, of course if Grindelwald is promising, hey, we're going to break down the walls between the wizarding world and the muggle world, and, we will rule the world, but we will rule it justly, she's probably gonna go for that because she wants to be with Jacob. But the fact that Jacob's like, yeah, this guy's evil, and she's like, but I have to go with him, Jacob. It is kind of silly. Harry didn't have the intention to kill Quirrell. I think he was just trying to protect himself. Although, the fact that Harry saw that it was burning Quirrell when he would touch him, and just was like, okay, I'm gonna double down on this, and was like on top of Quirrell burning his face. I think Harry is a kind of a little menace.
Stop the kids getting assistance. When the Horcruxes are revealed to exist, Dumbledore insists that the 3 children tasked with finding them tell nobody about them. He does this with the suggestion that he's protecting them from anyone who might pass that information back to Voldemort, who can make plans to stop them. That much makes sense. But it absolutely doesn't make sense that he'd make them withhold the information from the members of the Order that Dumbledore himself chose as trustworthy and honourable enough to be in the Order in the first place. Why did he all of a sudden no longer trust them? Wouldn't Lupin or Kingsley have been particularly valuable allies to the kids on their journey? Particularly after it was very obvious that Voldemort knew what was going on? 4. Grindelwald wasn't the master.
That was a stupid excuse. Why didn't he tell some of the other people, not just Harry? And it's like, because he didn't want Harry to find out. The more people who know information, the harder the secret is to keep. And yeah, he trusts Kingsley, he trusts Lupin, but it's just kind of one of those things. It's like, the more people who know, the harder it would be to keep it a secret. Because it's not that he was trying to keep the secret from Harry or the Order. He was trying to keep the secret away from Voldemort. And if Voldemort caught any wind of the fact that people knew about the Horcruxes, he was going to take them and hide them forever. And that would be a problem, I believe. So it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, the less people who knew about it, yeah, he trusted them. That's cool. But it's just kind of one of those things. It's like, yeah, but you know the saying, the best way to keep a secret between two people is if one of them is dead.
Of the Elder Wand. At the end of the first Fantastic Beasts movie, Grindelwald is disarmed by Tina after his deception has been unveiled and the heroes watch him carted off to be imprisoned, where we find him in the sequel. In that sequel, the opening act sees Grindelwald handed his wand back by the treacherous Abernathy. When he escapes, he's able to use the wand uninhibited as someone who wasn't the master of it would be, and it's later confirmed in the Harry Potter movies that Dumbledore became master of the Elder Wand by disarming its current master, Grindelwald, during their duel. Yet, how could Grindelwald be the master of the wand when it's also established in the same Harry Potter movie that Voldemort himself wasn't the true master of the wand because it was Malfoy who disarmed Dumbledore? With that logic established, the true master of the Elder Wand at the end of the Fantastic Beasts movie is, in fact, Tina. 3. Giant romance.
So yes and no. So I think people don't understand and misinterpret the whole idea. So it's the same thing with like Malfoy's wand. Just Malfoy's wand in general. Harry took Malfoy's wand. Malfoy's wand goes, I am no longer loyal to you, Malfoy. I'm loyal to this Harry Potter kid. And in turn, the Elder Wand also followed that allegiance. But Harry, at the end of Deathly Hallows, gives Malfoy back his wand, and in theory, the allegiance of Draco's wand, not the Elder Wand, would go back to Draco. I think if Harry had handed Draco the Elder Wand, the allegiance would have gone back to Draco. And since Grindelwald, yeah, Tina disarmed Grindelwald, which I don't even think, well, and it wasn't that same one, but Grindelwald then did get the Elder Wand back, so it was never, he regained its allegiance. It's a little bit more complex than, oh, if I take this from you, it's no longer yours, finders keepers, no takesies backsies. And that's where Tina failed. If she had looked at Grindelwald and said, no takesies backsies, sorry, Grindelwald, you don't get your wand back. Also, that whole first scene of Crimes of Grindelwald doesn't make sense, and I'm not going to go into it because Super Carlin Brothers have beat that scene with a dead horse, because they're constantly talking about how it doesn't make sense, and it doesn't. It really, it's like, okay, so Grindelwald escaped already, but he was just hanging out for a while by himself. Like, he could have left the country and been free, but whatever.
Here's a slightly more biological concern from the Harry Potter films that definitely requires some sort of explanation, even though this was always primarily a kids' series and would never have been able to include full-blown sex, particularly between a man and a magical creature. However, it needs to be asked, how the hell did Hagrid's father impregnate a full-grown giant? That seems to suggest that a tiny normal man was somehow able to seduce a terrifying violent creature and then also have full sex with her. There are many questions here relating not only to seduction technique through to opportunity and, not least at all, the actual mechanics of their sexual activity. Nothing could have appropriately fit. 2. Credence's twist made...
Easy. Hagrid's dad had a massive hog. No. I'm sorry. What's it matter how Hagrid's dad and Hagrid's mom got together? Also, I find it kind of offensive that she referred to a sentient creature as a magical creature. Like, a human and a magical creature, because it kind of makes it sound like Hagrid's dad did it with a horse, not a just giant humanoid creature. But does it matter? Yes, we understand Hagrid's dad was tiny. Like, Hagrid, at the age of 13, said that he could pick up his dad and put him on the dresser. He may have been a tall, skinny man. Like, he didn't have to be like a 4'11" king, short king trying to make it with a 20-foot giant. Like, listen, clearly there was a connection there. Maybe he was a very, like, strong individual. Like, we don't know about Hagrid's dad. Maybe we'll see a little bit more and it'll make sense. Maybe it'll be Jason Momoa. Hagrid's dad is Jason Momoa, confirmed.
Makes no sense. Right, so this is a more complex one, but it's worth sticking with. The twist in the Crimes of Grindelwald establishes that the last surviving male of the Lestrange family was killed as a child in a ship disaster at sea. There is the first issue. That child wasn't the last surviving Lestrange male because Bellatrix married Rodolphus Lestrange, who was both a male, a Lestrange, and alive. That child was rumoured to be Credence Barebone, but it turns out that he was, in fact, Aurelius Dumbledore, a baby who was coincidentally also on the same ship journey in the carriage opposite, who was swapped with Corvus Lestrange when that unfortunate child's sister Lita couldn't take his crying anymore. So that means that Albus, Ariana and Aberforth had another sibling who was born around 1901, the year of the ship disaster. Except that can't be true because Kendra Dumbledore died in 1899 and Percival died in Azkaban sometime between 1890 and 1900. So who the hell were his parents? It could feasibly be that Percival had a second lover he impregnated, but since when did Azkaban allow sexy visits? And it's not like we can just say that Aurelius Twist is Grindelwald lying to manipulate Credence because the Phoenix issue confirms he's a Dumbledore. If he wasn't, the Phoenix wouldn't appear to him. Something else has to be going on here, truthfully, but that doesn't mean these plot holes aren't still legitimate. 1. Why didn't the Phoenix appear?
So apparently this video came out before Secrets of Dumbledore because they're trying to find plot holes on a story that we find out that Aurelius Dumbledore is the son of Aberforth, which is still kind of weird, but you know, it makes a little bit more sense. But also just, you know, the last remaining male Lestrange, like, we don't know that the Lestranges that we see with the Black family are the same lineage of the ones that we see in Fantastic Beasts. We assume Lita Lestrange might be a part of that lineage because she went to Hogwarts. So clearly, there is a British familial tie to that, but that doesn't mean, like, we already know that Leah's father was not the most we already know that Lita's father was not the most loyal to his lovers. So it makes sense that there may have been another person in his lineage. All right,
To
next one.
Credence earlier. And speaking of the Phoenix issue, why exactly did the Phoenix wait so long to appear to Credence / Aurelius? If he was born in 1901 and the films are set in the second half of the 20s, Credence has been abused by an overbearing, violent adoptive mother for probably 2 decades. He was beaten, indoctrinated, told to suppress his magical powers to the point that he became an obscurial, and forced to have a haircut that can only be described as heinous. Any of those single issues should have been enough for him to have been classed as in need. So why didn't the Phoenix appear to him at any point during his past? Why was him finding out his true parentage deemed a worthy enough time of peril to justify his belated appearance? And that's our list.
That's the problem you have with the Phoenix part of that. I mean, I get that could be considered a plot hole for sure. Like, hey, why didn't a Phoenix appear for this kid at this point or that point or this other point? But it's just kind of like that's your explanation. That one was a weird one. Uh I don't really I don't think enough about the Fantastic Beast series to be like, "Huh, that's a plot hole." No, it's I don't deal with it enough.
What other Harry Potter plot holes have plagued you over the years? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. I've been Ash and this has been What Culture. Make sure to subscribe to the What Culture YouTube channel for more lists like this, and don't forget to visit whatculture.com for daily news and articles. Thanks for watching.
All right, finally, not a What Culture video.
Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. Today we're going to be discussing plot holes. It shouldn't come as any sort of a surprise that, even within the captivating wizarding universe, astute readers and viewers have stumbled upon perplexing plot holes. And these gaps in the narrative, where certain details seem to defy logic or leave unanswered questions, have sparked lively debates among Harry Potter enthusiasts. Today we'll embark on a quest to dissect some of the most intriguing plot holes that have left fans scratching their heads, diving into these mysteries, examining the inconsistencies, and seeking to find plausible explanations or theories that help to reconcile these discrepancies. A few of the more common plot holes identified by fans actually have simpler explanations than you may think. Anyway, I won't dawdle any longer, let's dive into it. Why didn't Voldemort make his Death Eaters make the Unbreakable Vow? The Unbreakable Vow is a magical contract made between two parties that utilizes a binding spell. It's a dangerous and powerful spell that carries significant risks. Essentially, if either party breaks the term of the vow, they instantly die. And given how honest the spell keeps everyone, it's surprisingly underutilized in the Harry Potter series. And one use case in particular that often jumps to the forefront of fans' minds is, why didn't Voldemort use it on his Death Eaters? They were his followers, his henchmen. They can't think of a better way to keep your followers loyal than the imminent threat of death. There are a few possible explanations for this apparent plot hole, but I still think that the vow would have been a better course of action. The first possibility is that Voldemort...
I think they just think too much, especially that one about Hagrid's parentage. Yeah, I think that one's a silly one. And talking about this with the uh Unbreakable Vow, I think he's probably going to answer it the same way I do. Is it works two ways. So Voldemort wouldn't want to use the Unbreakable Vow because if it's like, hey, do you swear fealty to me? Both of them have to say, I do. Like, it's not a one-sided thing. It's, I think if Snape had broken the Unbreakable Vow, both parties would have died. I'm not really sure. They don't go into enough detail on how the Unbreakable Vow works for it to, like, maybe become like, I'm a dark wizard. You must swear fealty with me and give me the unbreakable vow. Plus, in certain cases, the unbreakable vow leaves a trace on the wizard, so it would be easy to trace Death Eaters, which then would immediately kill them because it would kind of let the secrets out.
Valued fear over loyalty. Voldemort was known for instilling fear in his followers, rather than relying on their genuine loyalty. He may have believed that the threat of punishment or death was enough to keep his followers in line, and that the unbreakable vow was unnecessary. He also had an exceedingly large ego, which may have caused him to believe that no one would possibly cross him. He was also extremely powerful and perhaps overly confident in his magical abilities. He may have believed that he could control his followers using legitimacy or other similar means, and therefore felt no need to resort to the unbreakable vow. The unbreakable vow would have kept people like Snape from becoming double agents. Why did no one notice Peter Pettigrew on the Marauders map?
And that makes sense. I think Voldemort thought his followers feared him enough that they were loyal. Like, he didn't think anybody would betray him. So, I mean, that's a decent explanation, honestly. But still.
One of the biggest plot holes in the Harry Potter franchise revolves around Ron's pet rat, Scabbers, who was later revealed to be Peter Pettigrew. Ron slept with Scabbers every night and carried him around, which should have been visible on the Marauders map possessed by Fred and George Weasley. However, the twins never mentioned to anyone that Ron was sleeping with a man named Peter. Some argue that Fred and George may not have noticed every name on the map, but given their mischievous nature and love for pranks, it seems likely that they would have checked on Ron's location enough times to spot his invisible friend Peter, making this particular revelation a glaring inconsistency in the story. I'm sure Peter Pettigrew's name wouldn't have meant much to Fred and George, but the constant close proximity with their brother should have set off alarm bells. Why even have locks?
We talked about this one already because they had already brought it up. Is why would Fred and George be following Ron? I don't even think they really use by the time Ron is in Hogwarts, it is Fred and George's third year. Even Harry, who had the map in his third year, didn't really I think he would have noticed if he saw Peter Pettigrew on the map. And I understand there's the theory that they've come out with that, Marauders aren't visible on the Marauders map. That is a Super Carlin brother theory that is not confirmed in the book. So it is safe to assume that all people can be seen on the map. The map never lies. You cannot hide from the map. So it stands to reason that Harry, like Fred and George, aren't looking at Gryffindor Tower to see, oh, look, there's me with Ron and Peter Pettigrew. Because he doesn't need to look at himself in the tower because he knows where he is. He's going to be looking at where's Snape, where's Dumbledore, where's Filch, where's McGonagall, kind of things like that. Like, he's going to look at the people who are going to cause him a headache when he's trying to sneak out the few times that he's using it. He's not going to be down at the prefect's bathroom and going, what's Ron doing? I know Peter Pettigrew's not there at that time. I got it. But still, Harry would have probably noticed it before Fred and George because Fred and George had the map from their first year. So by their third year, they're only using it to check to see where's Filch. Okay, cool. We're going to do our mischief here because Filch is on the other side of the castle right now. Whereas in their first year, yeah, they probably were like, look, there's us, kind of thing. And if that's the case, wouldn't they have questioned why Percy was hanging out with a guy named Peter constantly? Hey, Percy, how's your friend Peter? Who's Peter? Like, I would think it would be more Percy. and Peter, not Ron and Peter. So, that's just me.
In the Harry Potter story, our protagonists encounter door locks on a few occasions. And while this may seem like a rather innocuous detail to dive into, I can't help but think about how useless locks are in the magical world. The main reason for this being that the unlocking charm, Alohomora, is taught to first-year Hogwarts students. If just about every witch and wizard walking around has the ability to unlock locks, it makes them seem very pointless. There also seem to be a variety of door unlocking / general unlocking charms present in the wizarding world, which makes this doubly confusing. Colin Creevey is using Muggle technology at Hogwarts. In the Goblet
Alright. There are doors that can be magically locked that are stronger than Alohomora. I don't understand why this is a problem. Like, this is one of those ones that I don't get why people are like, well, what's the point of keys? Sirius Black didn't even use Alohomora. He had a pocket knife that he could use to unlock doors. Like, Alohomora is a basic unlocking spell. If you lock the door physically, you can unlock it with Alohomora. You can lock the door magically, which would probably prevent you from using Alohomora. Need to log off for my appointment now. Thank you for the stream. Talk to you later. Yeah, I'll be here probably until about 8:30. So if I'm still here after your appointment, you're welcome to come back in. So good luck with your appointment, whatever it is. I assume therapy at this time of night. So I don't know when. Thumbs up. There. Thumbs up. Anyway, next thing. Muggle technology. It's an old-timey camera that doesn't use electricity. It's electricity that is interfered with by magic, which still doesn't make sense to me anyway, but, you know, by the by, the camera works because it's not electric.
Fire, it is established that Muggle technology doesn't function at Hogwarts, preventing students from using phones or email to communicate with their parents. However, bearing that piece of information in mind, it seems puzzling that Colin Creevey's Muggle camera appears to work just fine. It is possible that a professor enchanted the camera to make Colin feel more at home and allow him to capture his wizarding experiences, but I'm a bit skeptical. How did Fred and George get into the Marauder?
Why do you need... It's not electric. Clearly, Harry Potter Theory doesn't understand how classic cameras, because it's an old school camera. Like, you got to think this is the 90s. He's talking about cell phones and email, and it's like, okay, well, those didn't exist. Email did, but cell phones didn't exist at that time. Well, they did, but not in the way that we would use them. But the kind of camera that Colin Creevey had was a big flash bulb, which, didn't use electricity. It could use a flint and steel to light the flash bulb. The film literally is just, you open it up, it exposes it to light, and the shutter closes. There's no electricity in there. The shutter can be mechanical because you push down and it opens and closes. So I don't even really know basic camera structure enough to be able to explain how it all works, but I at least could figure out that it's not electric. It's the electricity that messes with it. It's all a chemical process and a mechanical, am I missing something here with that? But anyway, next theory.
Map. The Marauders map was originally created by James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew during their time at Hogwarts. And since the map's creation, it has changed hands on a few occasions. When Fred and George Weasley began attending Hogwarts, they stole the map from Argus Filch, and after getting ample use of it, they passed it on to Harry Potter. While handing the map over, they inform him that the password to activate it is, "I solemnly swear that I am up to no good." By tapping the map with a wand and reciting the password, the map reveals its secrets, including the layout of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, the location of every person within the castle, and secret passages that can be used to navigate the school grounds undetected. The issue here is how Fred and George would have figured out the map's password. As they stole the map from Filch, presumably no one would have ever told them. As things stand, there's no identifiable explanation for how the pair would have revealed the map's secrets, or even why it would have stood out as an item of interest. The trace...
Alright, the Marauders map. So they break into Filch's office, confiscated items in I think a filing cabinet marked highly dangerous. They have a few seconds to grab what they can. They grab that out and pocket it. So they know that it has some sort of magical properties to it. And we also have the answer on how they probably figured it out, is that if you poke and prod at it and talk to it enough with your wand, it will talk back. And it probably taught them how to open it. Like, I bet you they probably were just like, want to reveal your secrets. And it's like, oh, we're troublemakers and you could suck it. And then eventually it started to, maybe if it gave them missions on like, hey, you've got to do these things. And since it can track where you're going, it's like, hey, go over here and do this and go over here and do this. And once you figure out so many things, congratulations, you have access to the map with this word. I solemnly swear that I am up to no good. And then you turn it off by saying mischief managed. I feel like the Marauders would have wanted to be able to pass down the map eventually, because once they graduate, they don't need the map. So it's kind of one of those things. It's like, hey, this is how it got figured out. Cool. Have a nice day. Cameras do not have electricity, at least not the one that Colin Creevey
is inconsistent. After first stepping foot into the world of magic, Harry was repeatedly cautioned against using magic outside the premises of the school and before muggles. The Wizarding World's concealment depended on this. The Ministry of Magic attempted to instill discipline in young witches and wizards by tracking any use of magic in their vicinity using a trace charm. However, throughout the series, this enforcement method was shown to be highly inconsistent. For instance, when Dobby or Harry performed magic at the Dursleys, the Ministry was quickly informed. In contrast, when members of the Order of the Phoenix used magic in the same location, there appeared to be no reaction from the trace. Ultimately, the trace charm proved highly ineffective, particularly as it wasn't able to properly identify the person responsible for casting the magic in the first place.
I've talked about this in I think a couple videos about the trace and how it works. It basically, and we can use it with the puzzle pieces. So if a magic person, if you have a minor, use magic, and there are no, probably within a vicinity, and there are no other magical people around, it's like, hey, this underage wizard is clearly using magic. Because even if Dobby was there, guess what? Dobby doesn't show up because he's a house elf. Nobody cares about house elves. We know that in the series. It talks about how nobody cares about house elves. So why would the trace keep track of that? They just see, oh, hey, magic is being done, and the only one around is Mr. Potter. Because why would a house elf be in a muggle house? But if there is a of-age wizard, we're going to give them 2 puzzle pieces, and magic is used, and the trace goes off and says, hey, magic has been used, they're going to see, oh, there's an adult wizard in that vicinity. It's probably fine. that's probably the magic that's being used. And yeah, the Ministry probably could have been like, hey, we need to get rid of there's someone using magic in the Potter's house, we should probably track that down, because the whole idea was like, hey, we can't do magical forms of travel because we don't want you to get in trouble. And then there's magic being used. So that's the inconsistency that I have a problem with, is that it's like, oh, we can't be using magic in front of you, but, we can also use magic in front of you. So, yeah. But the trace works in the fact that if there's nobody who can perform magic around a child, they don't know, because they don't know who performs magic. But if they see, oh, there's nobody magical around this person, then he's probably doing the magic.
Why didn't Harry contact Sirius instead of going to the Ministry? Throughout the Harry Potter series, Harry and his godfather Sirius communicate through a variety of covert means. But when Harry becomes concerned that Sirius is in danger, he fails to employ any of them. In the Order of the Phoenix, Harry encounters a vision of Sirius being held captive at the Ministry, and fearing his friend is in danger, he recklessly rushes to his aid. As a result, Harry falls into the clutches of the Death Eaters, and Sirius ultimately loses his life. However, I feel like this entire tragedy could have been prevented if Harry had simply used an alternative and already established method of communication. You see, earlier in the series, Sirius had given Harry a two-way mirror, which he and Harry's father James utilized during their school days. While Harry does use a fragment of the mirror to contact Aberforth later in the series, it would have been more advantageous if he had used it to confirm whether or not Sirius was in danger before acting upon his fears. The books do mention that Harry forgot about the mirror in his haste, but it does seem quite improbable that no one would have thought to use it at any point. How old is McGonagall? This particular plot...
That one didn't make sense at all. Why didn't Harry use the mirror that he gave it to him? Even the book explains that he could have used the mirror, but he just didn't. It's like, you answered your own question in the question, is why didn't he use the mirror? The book said he didn't. He didn't even think to use the mirror because he threw it in his suitcase and then forgot about it because he was like, well, I don't want to communicate with Sirius, because he was kind of mad at him at the time, because I don't want him to just think something's wrong and come bursting into the school and getting in trouble. So he threw it in his suitcase, forgot about it, because, his school year kind of sucked, and didn't think, maybe I should probably check on that. So, no, that was dumb. And then we've already talked about this one with the Age of McGonagall. Fantastic Beasts: Crimes of Grindelwald. Just not canon. So, McGonagall doesn't exist in the 1920s.
Toll actually branches over into the Fantastic Beasts universe. According to the timelines presented in the books, it was a commonly held belief that Professor McGonagall was born in the year 1935. However, her appearance in a scene set at Hogwarts in 1910, depicted in the Crimes of Grindelwald, left everyone a little bit confused. McGonagall's presumed birth year places her in the late 1880s, but her engagement at the age of 18 to a Muggle who died in the First Wizarding War seems to challenge this estimation. At present, there is no reasonable explanation for this inconsistency. Sirius and Polyjuice Potion. Though Sirius Black was able to clear his name in the eyes of those closest to him, he remained unable to prove his innocence to the wider wizarding world. Consequently, he was confined to Grimmauld Place, largely unable to join the other wizards in the Order's battle against Voldemort. At times, his frustration led him to break the rules of his confinement, transforming into his dog form to visit Harry and escape the confines of the house. However, Sirius was cautious since the Ministry was aware of his dog form and he needed to avoid being sent back to Azkaban. And while transforming into his dog form was undoubtedly a sensible precaution, there is another method that Sirius could have explored which seems more appropriate. Polyjuice Potion. Polyjuice Potion, which allows you to change your physical form, is seemingly not overly complex to create. Even students with minimal training seem to be able to manage it, and has the ability to deceive any other wizard. Quite easily, Sirius could have assumed the physical form of another Order member, traveling around largely unnoticed. Why Sirius would not have explored this option is a mystery to me. Harry and the Theth.
Alright, so Polyjuice Potion is complex. It could work in theory for Sirius to go on, but it's also one of the things this Polyjuice Potion isn't... Like, if somebody guesses that you are under Polyjuice Potion, it can be beaten. It only works if you can beat the disguise, and if he's just walking around as what? Another wizard? Like, what? Is he gonna be, take a hair off a Lupin and walk around as Lupin? And also, I don't know if it would work for him to be Lupin, because Lupin is a werewolf and not human per se, but there's a couple weird things in there, and it's like, okay, or is he going to be a muggle? And then people are going to question, like, who the hell are you? And then he's going to have to keep taking it if he's on a mission, and it's just, yes, he could have gone on missions. He didn't have to be cooped up in the house. But maybe it was safer for him to not be discovered? Because I think it's also implied that Sirius may not be all there. Like, we're seeing it from Harry's point of view, but the man spent 12 years being tortured by literal demons, basically. Speaking of those little demons, I do have a video coming out tomorrow. It's available for members only for right now, but it will be available tomorrow to watch, about the origins of Dementors. But I don't think Sirius was mentally all there, and I think he probably had a lot of PTSD that he couldn't work through, and I think he was already a very brash person to begin with, and it was probably safer for the Order for him to just not go out. Like, so I don't know why it's like, hey, let's send this man who has been tortured for 12 years, even though he was innocent. Like, he's not a sane man. Look at what he did in Harry's third year. He's like, I'm gonna break into Hogwarts and break into the Gryffindor common room and try to kill the person who killed my best friends by holding out a knife over a 13-year-old. Yep, that's a mark of a sane man. Like, yeah, we're seeing it from Harry's point of view, but Sirius was not all there. I think even Hermione brings it up. Like, yeah, Sirius is mentally, like, incapable of functioning properly, because, like, they talk about, oh, hey, I think he confuses Harry with James, or James with Harry. They're not the same people. And, like, even the movies actually did a good job in the fact that they showed off that it's like, hey, nice one, James. Like, clearly Sirius was not all there. I wouldn't have put him on missions either. He's too brash and kind of a flight risk. Because who's to say he wouldn't have seen, Pettigrew on one of his missions or something and ran out, blew the mission, and tried to kill Pettigrew and get other people killed. Like, yeah, see where the problem lies in that? I don't think it's a plot hole. I think it's Sirius is not all there. And probably, it probably takes a mental toll on someone to be pretending to be someone else for a very long time. Like, Barty Crouch Jr. was not sane he also spent a lot of time in Azkaban, not as much as Sirius, and look how messed up he was. And not only was he then imprisoned by his Azkaban, but then he was imprisoned by his father. Like, mentally, Barty Crouch Jr. was probably doing just as bad as Sirius was, and look how crazy that man was.
Thestrals. A thestral is a breed of winged horse with skeletal and reptilian features, resembling a sort of evil Pegasus. These horses, if you could call them that, pull the carriages at Hogwarts, and are only visible to those who have witnessed death. Harry first sees these creatures at the beginning of his 4th year, following the death of Cedric Diggory. However, fans have pointed out that Harry should have seen Thestrals earlier. In the Goblet of Fire, after the Triwizard Tournament ends and Diggory has already died, Harry sees the horseless carriages. Theoretically, he should have been able to see the Thestrals at that time, but they only become visible to him in the next book. J.K. Rowling herself has addressed this discrepancy, explaining that a person must fully internalize death in order to see Thestrals. Everyone has said to me that Harry saw people die before he could see the Thestrals. Just to clear this up once and for all, this was not a mistake. I really thought this one through. Harry did not see his parents die. He was 1 year old and in a cot at the time. Although you never see that scene, I wrote it and then cut it. He didn't see it. He was too young to appreciate it. When you find out about the Thestrals, you find that you can see them only when you really understand death in a broader sense, when you really know what it means. Someone said that Harry saw Quirrell die, but that is not true. He was unconscious when Quirrell died in Philosopher's Stone. He did not know until he came around that Quirrell had died when Voldemort left his body. Then you have Cedric. With Cedric, fair point. Harry had just seen Cedric die when he got back into the carriages to go back to Hogsmeade Station. I thought about that at the end of Goblet, because I've known from the word go what was drawing the carriages. From Chamber of Secrets, in which there are carriages drawn by invisible things, I have known what was there. I decided that it would be an odd thing to do right at the end of the book. Anyone who has suffered a bereavement knows that there is the immediate shock, but that it takes a little while to appreciate fully that you will never see that person again. Until that had happened, I did not think that Harry could see the Thestrals. That means that when he goes back, he saw these spooky things. It set the tone for Phoenix, which is a much darker book. Neville and Dementors.
Alright, and we've talked about this already a little bit, about, like, I think Hogwarts Legacy kind of broke the idea and made it worse, is you see the dragon eat the guy at the beginning, and then all of a sudden the Thestrals show up. But your process, I think it depends on, what's happening, on how you process the grief. Like, if you just see someone get hit by a car and die on the street, you might be like, oh my gosh. Oh, that guy's dead. You processed it at that point. But if you have, like, you're walking with your significant other down the road and they get hit by a car and die, it's going to take you a lot longer to process that they're dead. Like, so I think the grieving process does make sense. I did bring that up. It's like, you have to go through the stages of grief, and then after you actually accept that they are dead, congratulations, you can see Thestrals. And I think that's really it. The Harry not seeing his mother die, Harry was in a cot. His mother went outside and was trying to stop Voldemort from coming into the room. Quirrell died in the hospital wing, except in the movie, but we just talked about that. So, yeah. The first time he sees death is Cedric. He didn't really have time to process it until after he got back from school, because what he was processing right after all that was, holy crap, Voldemort's back. And one of the guys that I thought was like a trusted advisor and mentor was the reason that Voldemort came back. Yeah, Harry's going through some shit. It's going to take him a while to process that. And even Dumbledore kind of, made it prolong So, I get it.
Another plot hole related to Harry's memories of his past arises when the Dementors appear on the Hogwarts train. While most of the children feel cold and miserable in their presence, Harry experiences a more intense reaction. He hears someone screaming, collapses, and requires Professor Lupin's assistance to drive the Dementor away. It is explained that Harry is profoundly affected because he has witnessed true horrors in his past, and the screaming he hears is a memory of his mother's death. This explanation is logical, but it raises the question of why Neville, who also experienced a tragic event in childhood, did not have a similar reaction on the train. Neville's parents were tortured into insanity by the Cruciatus Curse when he was just 16 months old, which is almost the same age that Harry was when his parents died. Moreover, Neville even visited his parents at St. Mungo's, witnessing their state and having knowledge of what happened to them. One would assume that this level of horror would be enough to affect Neville in the presence of Dementors as well. The Portkey timetable. During the Quidditch World Cup...
Alright, this is also... we've already talked about this in the live stream, but we'll talk about it a little bit more because there's probably new people in here. We do not have any sort of confirmation that Neville was in the room when Frank and Alice were tortured, because I feel like if Neville was in the room when Frank and Alice were tortured, Neville would have also been tortured. Just bottom line. Like, yes, my headcanon is that he was maybe in the house, maybe heard the torturing, and of course the Death Eaters wouldn't have cared about a screaming child. They're trying to torture the Longbottoms, and they don't need a baby to torture. They could have tortured it. Like, they could have grabbed Neville and tortured him to get his parents to talk, because at least my headcanon is it's not just Bellatrix Lestrange and Rodolphus and all that just being like, oh, we're gonna be mean, we're gonna go talk to the Aurors and figure out where Voldemort is. No, it's Neville was one of the kids of the prophecy. Voldemort wasn't just going to... It's also not confirmed on what happened to them. I always kind of pictured that they were on a mission and probably hunting down Death Eaters and were ambushed and tortured. But since the whole concept is that they were trying to find where Voldemort was, is I've kind of pieced together that my headcanon is that since Neville could have been the child of the prophecy, because I'm sure a lot of the Death Eaters knew the basic idea of the prophecy, that the one who was born at the end of July is, and whose parents thrice defied him, will be able to defeat the Dark Lord. So they're probably all like, okay, well, there's the Longbottoms and the Potters. And Voldemort's like, I'm going to go after the Potters first. I'm going to kill that kid. And then I'm going to go after the Longbottoms. So Voldemort goes after the Potters. Harry survives, at least people think, and Voldemort disappears. So then the next best thing is, hey, we should probably go check with those Longbottoms and see maybe if, they have seen him, because if he was going to go after the Longbottoms after the Potters, maybe the Longbottoms know where he is. And then they torture the Longbottoms to try to figure out what had happened. But nothing comes of that. But that's just me. Because clearly they were trying to get the whereabouts of Voldemort, because they thought, okay, after Voldemort goes to the Potters, he's going to the Longbottoms. But of course, he only really leaked out the whole lot, because Snape only cared about the Potters. So of course he went to Dumbledore and was like, hey, you gotta hide the Potters. To me, I feel like Voldemort would have been like, okay, well, the Potters are a little bit harder to find. I'm just gonna go take down the Longbottoms, and then I'll go after the Potters. But whatever. That's neither here nor there. But I don't think Neville was in the room or even in the vicinity of Frank and Alice.
Harry and the Weasleys use a portkey, an old boot, to reach the event. Across the Wizarding World, numerous portkeys are set up, implying specific activation times. However, the portkey Voldemort uses to transport Harry in the Triwizard Tournament must have been enchanted to work only within the maze. As Voldemort couldn't possibly know when Harry would reach the cup, it raises the question of how the portkey was timed correctly. Some portkeys may have wider timing windows, but the World Cup portkeys had a small window to prevent muggles from using them. The Triwizard Cup's portkey likely had a wider window to cover the contestants' time in the maze. My point is this: the specifics behind portkeys and their timings remains a bit of a mystery. Why didn't the Ministry use its truths?
Alright. Portkeys. This is also one of those plot holes that I see plot holes that I see all the time, where it's like, portkeys don't make sense. Portkeys make sense. I think you can set a time on them. For the World Cup portkeys, they have to be at a certain time. And it wasn't that they, oh no, this is going to disappear. It might have had a charm that, hey, at this time it's going to vibrate, because I think it starts to vibrate first, and they're like, okay, we should probably grab this. But it was probably one of those things, it's like, hey, these portkeys have to leave at certain times because we don't need a bunch of groups of wizards portkeying into the same area at the same time. It's like trying to, like, saying, oh, well, planes don't make sense because why do they have to land at different times? It's because they don't want a bunch of people appearing into a small area at the same time. It would be quite suspicious. I think portkeys don't have times on them. You could put probably times on them, like, hey, this is gonna work no matter what, because we see that in the Seven Potters, is the portkey comes in without people on it. So you could probably set up times on it, but we also see Dumbledore make a portkey to transfer Harry back to Hogwarts, and there's no time limit on it. It's just, here's a portkey. So I think the Triwizard Cup was always a portkey that would have brought you back to the beginning of the maze, because nobody's shocked when he shows up at the front of the maze holding the Triwizard Cup. I think the cup had a secondary portkey on it that transferred him to the graveyard, which, that's the big deal.
Serum. Veritaserum, capable of compelling truth from the drinker, is one of the most powerful potions in the Wizarding world, but for some strange reason, it's heavily underutilized in the story. This potion had the potential to greatly benefit the Ministry of Magic in resolving a multitude of issues more efficiently. For example, following the First Wizarding War, this truth serum could have been used during the trials of known Death Eaters. Some escaped imprisonment by claiming to be under the Imperius Curse, while others, like Sirius Black, were unjustly convicted. The use of Veritaserum could have eliminated any doubt. I won't go in much further, as I've actually already made a much larger breakdown of why Veritaserum was used so infrequently, but if you're curious, go and check it out. Why didn't Sirius...
And we've already talked about this one too, is a Legilimens can bypass it, and you also can just tell a not truth, like a not lie, like, basically just be like, oh, well, I didn't not kill that person. Like, they were alive when I last saw them. And then the next thing I knew, they were dead. I don't know what happened. I closed my eyes, and all of a sudden they were dead.
escape Azkaban sooner? In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry learns that a dangerous murderer, Sirius Black, has escaped from Azkaban prison with the intention of killing him. Although Sirius's motivations become clearer towards the climax of the film, one thing remains unclear: why he chose to remain imprisoned for such a long time. Fans of the movies and books know that Sirius used his animagus form, a large black dog, to escape. He intentionally lost weight, then transformed and squeezed through the bars of the prison. However, this raises the question of why he didn't do it sooner, as transforming into his animal form seems relatively simple. Sirius could have easily lost the weight in a matter of weeks, so why fester in Azkaban for years? One argument for why Sirius would have remained in Azkaban is that he would have had no way to prove his innocence. However, after seeing Pettigrew in the Weasley family's photo in the newspaper, he would have seen this as an opportunity to regain his freedom and prove his innocence, prompting his escape. Why was Cho Chang at the Battle of Hogwarts?
It wasn't until he saw that Peter Pettigrew was still alive that he was even able to get the like, he was still depressed, like he still was around Dementors and he knew he was innocent, but like he didn't have the willpower to survive at that point. I don't understand why it's still, oh well, he saw the Peter Pettigrew and then he lost weight to slip through the bars. No, he was malnourished because he was in prison and they weren't treating their prisoners well, because that's part of the problem with the wizarding world. That one doesn't make sense. Why didn't he break out earlier? It was because he saw that Harry was in danger that he was like, I need to get out of here to protect Harry. And then he got the willpower to be able to slip past the Dementors. Like, he was able to keep himself sane because, he knew he was innocent, and that was able to, like, keep him from going completely insane. But having the willpower because he was like, you know what? I gotta kill that son of a bitch because he's gonna hurt my godson, is a pretty good, willpower to get him out. And that's what allowed him to get out. He probably could have escaped, but he probably wouldn't have survived. The fact that he had to swim from Azkaban through the ocean to get to the UK is crazy, because Azkaban's not easy to find, and he probably didn't know which direction he needed to go. So, good for him.
In The Goblet of Fire, we're introduced to Cho Chang, a 5th year student who becomes involved with Cedric Diggory and later joins Dumbledore's army. She also develops a romantic relationship with Harry. Interestingly, despite graduating from Hogwarts in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Cho is still present at the school during the Battle of Hogwarts. This raises the question of why she is still there, especially since she is seen wearing a uniform. The answer to this plot hole sort of boils down to what version of Harry Potter you're looking at, book or movie. In the books, Cho returns to Hogwarts after getting a message on the Dumbledore's army coin, subsequently apparating into Hogshead and entering Hogwarts through Ariana's portrait to join the fight. In the movies, on the other hand, Cho Chang is represented as being in the same year as Harry, which is why she would have been present for the battle. And that's it for today's video. What do you...
Is that a plot hole? That's just an inconsistency between the movies and the books, right? Like, that's not a plot hole. That's not how cameras work. So, yeah, anyway.
you think of these plot holes? Do you have any you'd like to add? Please leave a comment down below. Also, if you enjoy the content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, remember, it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live.
In a book like Harry Potter, which is all about magic and wizards and is aimed at children, we can't expect everything to be watertight and without plot holes or mistakes. But just because we should expect those things doesn't mean we can't dive in and make fun of them. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about why the Seven Potters was a terrible plan, why Hermione wiping her parents' memories and sending them to Australia is completely pointless, and why Dumbledore's decision-making makes him either stupid, reckless, or more likely both. And by the way, some of these things might not technically be plot holes. They might just be terrible character choices or flawed plot points. Lord knows there's a few of those. But I'm gonna just group them all into the plot hole category for this video. So let's dive into some of my favourite plot holes. So The Seven Potters was the thrilling opening to the final book. And the idea was that having 6 people use Polyjuice Potion to disguise themselves as decoy Harrys was the best and safest plan to allow Harry to leave Privet Drive without being identified, hunted, or killed by Voldemort and the Death Eaters. Now the plan came from Dumbledore himself, via Snape, then through Mundungus, and eventually to Moody and the Order of the Phoenix. So it was convoluted, but it came from Dumbledore, so you'd think it would be a good plan, right? Wrong.
Come again?
This is such a stupid, overly complex, not at all thought out plan to get Harry from Privet Drive to his safe house. First, by making 6 decoy Harrys, you're not really protecting the original that much. He still looks like himself, so they'll still go for him. You're just adding a target to the backs of 6 additional people, rather than taking the target off of Harry. At the very least, if you don't mind these 6 people being live bait, then when they've taken the Polyjuice Potion to look like Harry, have Harry take Polyjuice Potion to look like somebody else. Because protecting Harry was the whole point, right? But no, they leave him in plain sight looking the same way he always does. Honestly, 2 seconds of planning could have helped you come up with so many better ideas. And not just a little bit better either, much, much better. Having Harry use Polyjuice Potion to look like somebody else. A random muggle off the street, for example. If the Death Eaters don't know who he's disguised as, the chances of him surviving are far higher. Rather than him being one of 7 Potters, he's now one of over 1 million people in Surrey. Rather than 6 decoys, there are now over 1 million decoys. And you might think that puts over 1 million people at risk of being killed, but the Death Eaters are specifically told not to shoot to kill, because Voldemort wants them to leave Harry for him. So with over 1 million decoys, and the Death Eaters being instructed not to kill Harry and save him for Voldemort, well, the odds are they're not going to kill anybody, just in case. Another idea would be just making an illegal portkey. Like, I know all portkeys are supposed to be registered with the Ministry, and they'd never let a portkey be registered in Harry's house, but an illegal one? I mean, Harry's being hunted anyway. Before long, he's going to be undesirable #1. You might as well throw in making an illegal portkey as another crime. Plus, we know the portkeys can't be tracked very well, because every safe house that each of the decoys arrives at has a portkey there to take them to the Burrow. And there's no way that all of those portkeys are legal and registered with the Ministry when the Order knows the Ministry is on the verge of collapse. Another much better plan than the one they come up.
All right, so there's a lot going on right now, and I do want to stop for a second. I like Brett's thoughts. I like his videos. I like his ideas, but this is one of those plot holes that a lot of people point out, like the 7 Potters don't make sense. It wasn't just to protect Harry. It was also to distract the Death Eaters while they got the Dursleys out. Because the Death Eaters could have gone after the Dursleys. But if they knew, oh, the Potter's going to leave this time, they're expecting the Potter's, Harry to leave. But then, yes, they could have probably done the idea of the 7 Potters and have 7 people as Harry and another Order member under Polyjuice Potion leave, but the house is probably being watched. Anybody who leaves that house is probably going to be followed. But there is problems with the whole plan, because it's like, okay, then if that's the case, they should have followed the Dursleys and kidnapped them, because yeah, they were leaving at the same time as the Dursleys are disapparating. But I don't think the Dursleys were able to be approached by the Death Eaters. Like, there's probably like a certain boundary, but they were probably watching the boundary, and if they saw anybody leaving at that time, it might have been questionable. But then all of a sudden, 14 people come up in the air, and all of them have Harry Potters on them. It's like, it's a, not Queen's Gambit. I don't remember what it's, damn, I cannot remember the term. Where you have 3 cards face down and you have one of them is a Queen of Hearts and you mix it up and then you have to figure out where the queen went, and most of the time it's in their pocket. But yeah, I mean, the plan makes sense, especially to distract them from the fact that the Dursleys also are getting away. Because the whole thing is the Dursleys also have to go into hiding to make sure that, they aren't discovered and can be used to coerce Harry out. Because even Harry goes, they could use you to get to me. And then has a thought of, would I do that? And yeah, they could have taken Harry out, but they were probably watching the house, and it's like, okay, well, they, invisibility cloak, he could go to a neighbor's house that may have, like, he could go to Fig's house. He could go to Mrs. Fig's house, and then he could walk out, Polyjuice Potion as someone else, and, they're not watching Mrs. Fig. She's a squib. Who cares about her? And you have that situation. You could have done that. And just have him leave the boundary and apparate at that point. But yeah, there are other plans that they could have done. But I think they also just wanted to make sure that the Dursleys were safe. Because as long as, if they thought that Harry wasn't leaving at that time, they would have hunted down the Dursleys. But at that point, they were like, we don't, who? So I think part of it, the plan doesn't make sense, but it actually does kind of make sense when it comes to protecting the Dursleys.
Up with is to just have Harry wear the invisibility cloak, have him use the cloak to get onto the London Underground and then ride around on trains for a little while. Not only would he be invisible, but there's no way the Death Eaters would be able to understand the London Underground. Honestly, Mad-Eye Moody is supposed to be one of the most hardened, seasoned, strategically savvy Aurors the Wizarding world has ever seen. Surely he can tell this plan was terrible. There are 24 hours missing from Harry Potter's life. At the very beginning of the Philosopher's Stone, we follow Mr. Dursley for a day. He goes to work, gets lunch, comes home, watches the news, and through all of that he has a number of strange interactions with wizards who are celebrating the downfall of Lord Voldemort. Vernon has a full day of these interactions before the chapter ends, with Hagrid bringing Harry to Privet Drive. That means that Voldemort was defeated a full 24 hours before Harry comes to the Dursleys. But when Hagrid tells Dumbledore the timeline, there's no mention of this extra 24 hours at all. No, sir. House was almost destroyed, but I got him out alright before the muggles started swarming around. He fell asleep as we were flying over Bristol, so the house was destroyed. Hagrid shows up and gets Harry out before the muggles notice this destroyed house, and then he brings him to Surrey, and Harry falls asleep over Bristol. There's no mention of a full day between grabbing Harry and bringing him to Dumbledore. The only thing in the middle was him falling asleep over Bristol. So could Harry have just been sat in the rubble for 24 hours? Well, no, because Hagrid said he got to Harry before the muggles started swarming around. Now, I know muggles are supposed to be quite oblivious to magic, but I don't think they're so oblivious they could ignore a destroyed building in the middle of their village. So Hagrid must have got to Harry really soon after Voldemort's curse backfired and destroyed the entire cottage. Meaning either it took him 24 hours to get from Godric's Hollow to Surrey, which, considering Godric's Hollow is supposed to be in the West Country, should take around 4 hours by regular road, so even less time than that when you're flying. What's more likely is that the timeline just doesn't make sense. That, or Hagrid got drunk and went off for a day without even remembering that he'd done it. Which, you know, I wouldn't put past him.
Okay. So this is one that I think I've talked about before, not on this, but just in videos. My guess is Hagrid stopped at the Leaky Cauldron and forgot. Well, that's what he said. I think Hagrid was told by Dumbledore, "Hey, collect him and then hide for a little while because you're a giant man and people are going to probably recognize you." And he probably took Sirius's bike, went off, hid somewhere, and waited until nightfall to show up because Dumbledore said, "Hey, go collect Harry, and meet me at number 4 Privet Drive at midnight." So that's my thing. I think Hagrid probably went into hiding. Did he hide in a pub? Maybe. Did he hide in the church in Godric's Hollow? Maybe. Would have been weird if he walked in there with baby Harry and there's the crew from Cursed Child just chilling in there, because honestly, at the same point, they don't talk about how they got back from that time. Like, all of a sudden they're there, and then the next scene they're not. So that'd be really funny. Hagrid shows up and it's like, "Oh, hey, look." Whoops. Cursed Child's not canon, so that doesn't matter. But I think Hagrid went into hiding and just, took care of Harry for a day. That's why Hagrid is so connected to Harry. Like, Hagrid has that kinship because he spent a whole 24 hours, grieving Harry's parents and taking care of Harry, who probably had no idea what was going on. He was just like, "I'm hanging out with a big giant guy." Because he's like 1.5 years old. Year-olds probably have fun hanging out with giant Hagrid.
Sticking with Hagrid, his job makes no sense. I don't mean his job as care of magical creatures from the 3rd year onwards. I mean his job as keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts. You see, Hagrid got this job after he'd been expelled, when Dumbledore pleaded with then headmaster Armando Dippet to take him on and train him up. And that was immediately after he was expelled, by the way, not a few years later. And therein lies the issue. Hagrid's name has not been cleared, and won't be for about 50 years. So you see, Hagrid was expelled because everybody thought...
What would he have fed him? Oh, you said twice. In my defense, I posted that joke before that part of the video played. No, you're fine. How would he have fed him? I mean, he's 1.5. He probably eats baby food. You could probably feed him mac and cheese, or, if you went to a pub, I think pubs have like carrots and green beans. I mean, it's a 1.5-year-old. He could probably eat regular food. I don't know babies. I don't know baby development with their teeth, but I feel like at a certain amount, Harry could have eaten regular food. Not regular food, but some normal, like, squishy carrots and green beans. I think that would have been fine. Pubs have that, right? Corn. I think the food problem is not a big deal.
Well, he opened the Chamber of Secrets, unleashing the monster within, which went and murdered Moaning Myrtle. Try saying that 3 times fast. Murdered Moaning Myrtle, murdered. You can't. So if Hagrid was expelled for opening the Chamber of Secrets, causing the murder of a teenager at Hogwarts, how is it that anybody was okay with him immediately coming back as a member of staff at the very school where he committed that crime? Not only that, he was expelled for opening the Chamber of Secrets. And now his job as Keeper of Keys is to literally open and close things around the school. That'd be like if he went around murdering everybody with the killing curse and then putting him in charge of the dueling club. Now, I know Dumbledore believed Hagrid to be innocent, but Dumbledore wasn't the headmaster. Armando Dippet was. And Dippet clearly thought that Hagrid was guilty, or he wouldn't have expelled him. Now, I know Dumbledore believed Hagrid to be innocent, but nobody else did. Otherwise, Hagrid wouldn't have been expelled and had his wand snapped. So why is it that nobody, no teachers, no governors, no parents, nobody has an issue with Hagrid remaining at Hogwarts as Keeper of the Keys when they all believe he was just responsible for the death of a teenager.
So that one is a weird one. Like, I think that was one of those preemptive, like, hey, we snapped his wand, and then Dumbledore comes forth and goes, hey, here's the evidence to show that he is innocent. And the Ministry was probably like, oh, we screwed up, didn't we? And Dumbledore's probably like, yeah, you screwed up. And then he was able to convince Armando Dippet to give him a job. And, you know, I'm sure some people were like, yeah, but isn't he dangerous? And, you know, but people trusted Dumbledore at that point. He wasn't just a crackpot fool. Like, he was the guy, like, he was the one who was supposed to be next in line for Minister of Magic from, like, the time he graduated Hogwarts. Like, I don't know. Seems okay to me. And he wasn't just immediately given Keeper of the Keys and Grounds at Hogwarts, because we know that he basically kind of became a mentor to the Keeper of Keys and Grounds at Hogwarts until the previous person either died or retired, and then he took it over.
Dumbledore is often described in Harry Potter as being the greatest wizard of all time and the only wizard that Voldemort ever feared. But he makes a lot of questionable choices. Choices that, in the grand scheme of things, make no sense. And one of these things that he does that doesn't make sense is his complete lack of planning for after he dies, particularly when it comes to Harry and the Horcrux hunt. For somebody who supposedly had a plan all along, I cannot understand why Dumbledore wouldn't have had a portrait of himself made. Now, I know he has one in the headmaster's office like every other previous head teacher of Hogwarts, but I mean an additional one. Like how Phineas Nigellus has one in Grimmauld Place and one at Hogwarts, and there are others who have one in Hogwarts and one in the Ministry or in St. Mungo's, and they can go back and forth between them because we know the portraits are sentient and they can interact in real time. We see Dumbledore interacting with the portraits, sending them off to their other frames to gather information in real time and relay it to Dumbledore. And at the end of the Deathly Hallows, Harry has a conversation with Dumbledore's portrait, and Harry tells Dumbledore's portrait he threw away the Resurrection Stone and he wasn't going to go back for it. When he asks Dumbledore's portrait if he agrees, Dumbledore's portrait does agree. So we know these portraits aren't just echoes of their past selves, because they interact, they take in information, they form conclusions. It's like having the original person there, just in a slightly restricted form. So if a bunch of other previous head teachers can have multiple portraits of themselves that they can go between, why doesn't Dumbledore have a second portrait of himself made up? A portrait he could then leave to Harry in his will. Sure, the Ministry may take it for 30 days like they did with the Sword of Gryffindor or the Deluminator or the Golden Snitch, but after 30 days, it would be Harry's. And then Dumbledore could give Harry a bunch of information all the way through the final book, as he's going through the Horcrux hunt, going through his discovery of the Hallows. Dumbledore could help him process and plan, share information with him, be a sounding board. That would be so valuable to Harry on this journey in the final book, and Dumbledore knows what's at stake here. Why wouldn't he do everything he could to help? Plus, considering Dumbledore literally planned his own death, he definitely had the time to get a second portrait made up, whatever that process may be. He just, for some stupid reason, as usual, decides not to.
Well, we kind of talked about this in other points of, you know, why didn't Hagrid tell Kingsley Shacklebolt or Lupin the plan with the Horcruxes? It's, you know, the more people who know about the plan, the harder it is to keep it secret. I mean, that's exactly what I was going to say, is like, you know, you can't trust that, you know, something won't happen to his other portrait, because we don't know if you destroy one of the portraits, does it destroy all the portraits? Like, we don't know how the magical portraits work. And I think you don't just have a portrait that you can pass around like a walkie-talkie. Like, I think there's more to the portraits in the books that we don't know about, because it's like, oh, it's, you can't say it's a plot hole if there's no explanation for it. And yeah, they probably could have given Harry a portrait so he could talk to him, because they did have Phineas Nigellus, so clearly it does work, but it also would just be extremely broken. Instead of having Phineas Nigellus, who, you can't trust, and that's part of the whole thing with Phineas Nigellus is like, what information was he passing to Snape, and what information was he not passing to Snape, was kind of part of the whole plot, is like, ooh, is he good? Is he bad? And it makes for a more compelling story. Whereas if you have Dumbledore, it's like, okay, well, now everything's too easy. Dumbledore could be like, hey, here's all the information that I didn't tell you. I hope you can trust me. Like, it makes sense. It's Florian and Fortescue apparently was supposed to be someone who was going to teach Harry about the Elder Wand and Death Stick and all that. Like, that's why she introduced Florian and Mr. Fortescue in the third book. He was originally going to play the role that Ollivander did, but she liked Ollivander a little bit better. That's why she had them both kidnapped, because Voldemort was trying to find information, and so that's what they did. I'm gonna be right back, so I'm gonna run a quick ad just to, let things happen, and I will be right back. All right, I am back. Let's see. You have said a couple things. If I remember correctly, the portraits have to help the current headmaster, so if someone other than Snape, like the Carrows, were headmaster... Well, I don't know if they have to help. I think it's more of like, it's our duty as former headmasters to help the current headmaster. And it's like, you're not bound to help. You're just honored to help. Oh. Well, then I have no idea what that button is. Well, enjoy that you didn't have to watch an ad. Yeah. I don't see ads, so like even on my secondary playback that I have, just because I have premium, so I don't see ads at all. So I guess this doesn't actually work. Cool. I'm still learning the whole YouTube streaming stuff. Hey, no ads for you. You're good. All right, let's see what the next one is.
So look, it's not often we get to call Hermione an idiot, but her plan in the Deathly Hallows to protect her parents is complete lunacy. If you recall, Hermione wipes her parents' memories so they have no recollection of ever having had a daughter, let alone one who knew and was friends with Harry Potter. And when she's done wiping their memories, she ships them off to Australia. And the fact that she does both is where this plan becomes stupid. So why does Hermione wipe their memories? Well, she's worried the Death Eaters will come after them when they find out that Hermione is working with Harry. And so she feels like she's protecting them by taking any information she thinks the Death Eaters might want out of their brains, so they've got nothing to share, nothing to be tortured for. And when she's done that,
I'm doing this puzzle. This is what the finished product is. It's the Hogwarts Legacy cover art. I need to put the picture in like the corner or something, but it's actually coming together slowly. I'm sorting the pieces right now into quadrants to make it a little bit more manageable to get through, but yeah. Yeah, but the issue there is she doesn't have access to the portraits. She doesn't have access to the headmaster's office because she's not the rightful headmaster. Technically, McGonagall is the rightful headmistress, so McGonagall probably had access to it and was probably getting information.
she ships them off to Australia. But why? Clearly, Hermione believes that wiping their memories won't stop the Death Eaters from trying to torture information out of them anyway. The Death Eaters may not believe or care that they don't remember having Hermione as a daughter. And so Voldemort's forces will come after the Grangers anyway, so Hermione ships them off to the other side of the world. Presumably far enough away that she thinks they're out of the reach of the Death Eaters and of Voldemort. But if that's the case and sending them to Australia is enough to put them out of the Death Eaters' reach, why bother wiping their memories at all? Because as we've established, wiping their memories doesn't really stop them being at risk. So leave their memories intact and send them to Australia to safety. But that's the kicker, isn't it? Hermione clearly doesn't believe that sending them to Australia really puts them out of the reach of the Death Eaters. She knows the Death Eaters can still get to them in Australia if they want to. They could apparate there, they could take a portkey, they could fly brooms, hell, they could get a Muggle aeroplane. And since she knows the Death Eaters can reach them in Australia anyway, she wipes their memories as well. Which begs the question, Hermione. If you don't think they're any safer in Australia so you still wipe their memories, why send them there in the first place? Just wipe their memories and leave them at home. But she can't do that because wiping their memories doesn't really protect them, as we discussed earlier. It's just a cycle of doing things that doesn't really protect them. So wiping their memories and sending them...
Alright, so this is a silly idea, Brett. She doesn't wipe their memories. She changes their memories. Yeah, so wouldn't the same thing happen to the Carrows if they hypothetically became... Well, so that's the thing, though, is they would have been true headmaster or mistress if the Board of Governors recognize them as such. I don't think in the case of Dumbledore, the Board of Governors recognized Dolores. Because you could say the same, why would Snape have access to the headmaster's office? Granted, Dumbledore could have passed down, but it's the Board of Governors. I don't think the governors recognized Dolores, and that's part of the difference. The Carrows, if one of them became headmaster, they would have been recognized and have access to the office. I think it's a slight different thing, but getting to the Hermione point is, number one, the memories weren't erased. They were just buried and covered up with an alter ego. Not alter ego, an alternate, personality. It would have been easily cracked. But if they're in Australia, it would be a lot harder to find a random set of people who you wouldn't even think went to Australia. You're like, I'm looking for the Grangers. Where are they? Who knows? So it's kind of one of those things that's just like, it makes sense. Hermione's like may even said, I may never find them because I don't know where they went. But they're a lot safer because if she doesn't know where they are, nobody else will know where they are. And also, you can't apparate that far, Brett. You cannot apparate that far. I think apparation, you have to be within a certain distance, or it's more dangerous. Like the closer you are to the location that you're trying to apparate to, the safer it is. The further you go, the higher chance of splinching. So like UK is small, it's easy to probably apparate around the UK. The United States, you wouldn't be able to apparate around the United States. You would have to apparate, pause kind of thing. Yeah, and I mean that's kind of what a lot of these plot holes are. Like we just watched 2 What Culture videos, and both of those were just really weird in how they went into like, oh, how did Hagrid's dad and mom reproduce? Because Hagrid's dad was tiny and Hagrid's mom was huge. And it's like, what's it matter in that case? Yeah. But it's, let's see. I finished listening to the Deathly Hallows the other day, and it got me thinking, do we know what happened to Creature? I mean, he may have brought Harry a sandwich or stew or whatever Harry was looking for after the battle when he went to sleep in Gryffindor Tower. But that's the fun of the series. Like, I don't know if you guys have read Dungeon Crawler Carl, but that series is definitely one that, the deeper you look into it, the more you get out of it. Like, you can just listen to it as just, oh, hey, look, this is a fun, like, lit RPG where it's this man and this cat who are going through this dungeon and trying not to die. But then you can also go deeper into the series and go, wow, there's a lot to this. There's a political thriller going on at the same time, and just the horrors and atrocities that are also going on with this. It gets deep. You don't have to get that deep with the series. You could just be like, things go boom, and enjoy the book, or you can look really deep into the series and it's a lot of fun.
Them to Australia are just 2 layers of not very much protection. So why bother with either at all? Why are the Order not doing with the Grangers what they did with the Dursleys and putting them in a safe house with protection? Hell, you could even put them in the same house. Put the Grangers and the Dursleys in one house with people like Kingsley protecting it. Although sticking them with the Dursleys might end up being worse torture than what the Death Eaters would do to them anyway. Regardless, Hermione's plan is bonkers. She takes very extreme measures to provide not very much protection. And speaking of Hermione being an idiot, what if she was actually completely useless all the way through the Harry Potter series? How long do you think Harry and Ron would survive? I made a Harry Potter what if video here where I break down the whole Harry Potter series with the scenario that Hermione is completely stupid, can't do simple magic, never reads, and yet she's always just as self-assured in her own abilities. I think it's really funny and actually really interesting how much the series changes, so you might want to watch that video next.
The world of Harry Potter is a sprawling one. There are so many...
Ooh, sorry. All right, thanks. Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. I hope. And unfortunately, the Dungeon Crawler Carl videos aren't doing as well as I would hope. Like the first one did pretty good, the second one did all right, and then the rest of them are just kind of there. And I get it. Thank you. It's kind of one of those things that I'm gonna switch over to this. I think I'm about to finish up and wrap up the stream. Um, got one more. Uh, but I think it's one of those series. It's a lot of fun, and it's 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 fun. I'm having so much fun rereading through it because I've already finished. Mongo is appalled by the lack of Dungeon Crawler Carl videos. And I mean, I will probably keep doing Dungeon Crawler Carl, but based on my demographic, I feel like a lot of people in my like who watch my videos should like Dungeon Crawler Carl. Like the majority of my viewers are men who are around my age or slightly younger, like 25 to 35-year-old men from the United States. I think I have about 75% are male, and most of the people who watch are between 25 and 35. And so it's just kind of one of those things. It's like Dungeon Crawler Carl is made for you guys. Yeah, I mean, I would say watch the first review video, but it is spoilery. Um, there's plenty of ways to have access to it. There's free webtoons. They just came out with it in physical form as well. So you can buy it at Walmart or Target or wherever and read it, but it's free online. You can just search Dungeon Crawler Carl webtoon and probably access it. I started reading it last night, read the first one. It's exactly like the book. So it covers the first book. So if you don't want to spend any money because you're not sure if you're going to like it, that's the way to check it out. Also, I think on Sound Booth Theater, they have an app, but also a website. You can listen to the like it's kind of like the full cast, like immersive audio of like the first chapter of it. So you could listen to that. You could there's a lot of ways to experience it. It's all on Kindle Unlimited for free as well. Let's see. I think more people are going to pick up on it when the DCC show comes out. Definitely. Funny, the first person to recommend it to me was a woman, but we are both in a server with a lot of HP fans. I'll have to go online. Uh, I'm from the UK, so no Walmart or Target here. Amazon also has it. Uh, those are just those are local stores for me. So those are the first things that I saw, and that's where I've seen them. They also have them on like Books a Million, Barnes and Noble, which are also US only things. Um, and I'm not saying women can't enjoy it. I'm just saying it is written by a man for other men. He writes it for himself, clearly. Um, it's the same as like Fourth Wing, like is written by a woman and is mainly aimed towards women. I enjoy it. I've read ACOTAR. I haven't read Throne of Glass, but I've read ACOTAR. I've read Fourth Wing. Those are the two romantasy series that I've read. Um, but yeah, I'm not saying women can't enjoy it, but it is a lot of pee pee poo poo humor. And I think it's more boy funny than it is girl funny because it is definitely written for men by a man. But honestly, I think the fact that he writes really well for independent women says something about his character. Hopefully, it doesn't come out in the future that he's like a horrible, like, womanizer or something, because that would ruin the series for me. Granted, I still read Harry Potter, so I guess I'm not one to say anything. Um, of course, I get ready to finish the video, and I have most people in the chat. Um, so coming up tomorrow, I will be releasing a Dementor video. It's already up for members. So if you are any sort of member, I have a 99-cent membership, $5, $10, I think 15. I don't know what the highest one is. I don't expect anybody to pay that much. but I do have memberships available. You can access some videos early. I try to, at least. Sometimes I get a little bit behind in my posting. Yeah, Good Omens is a good example of, hey, there's a lot of good stuff. Oh, no, you're a horrible person. Dang. Now I don't feel like I should enjoy this. Because I love David Tennant. But I watched the first season, and then just kind of all the stuff about Neil Gaiman coming out, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to watch the second season. I don't even know if I want to go back and
It
watch
seems,
the first season.
despite your exhaustive defensive strategies, you still have a bit of a security problem, Headmaster.
Thank you for joining as a member, as a classmate. Welcome, classmate. You have gotten it back into Hogwarts. But yeah, you can enjoy most of my videos as a little bit early most of the time. At least one a week. I will try to at least do one a week of a early access video, usually my Harry Potter video. Sometimes my secondary video. I'm going to finish my Dungeon Crawler Carl review series, so there's 3 more videos. I just posted I the Bedlam Bride, so there's 2 more videos. Why am I blinking? Yeah. 2 more videos? No. Yeah, I never released. I think I started the first episode of the second season and then just kind of never got back to it. I've been really bad lately about not finishing TV shows. I haven't finished season 2 of Fallout. I have not finished Ball, and I'm still working my way through Spider-Man Noir. I have finished Invincible. I have finished The Boys. I did finish Daredevil Born Again. So I am caught up on that stuff, but like the secondary stuff, it's just kind of like I want to catch up, but I only have so much time in the day, especially doing all of this. And I am going to probably start doing 2 videos a week. After I do Dungeon Crawler Carl, I think I'm going to go through Percy Jackson. There are 20 books in just the Percy Jackson series, not counting the supplementary books into that, but also you have the Kane Chronicles and Magnus Chase additionally. So that's an extra 5 books on top of all of the supplementary stuff that I may look into, because I think that helps connect all the stories together. So we'll see, because there's another series coming out for the Percy Jackson series, as well as the final book of the trilogy for the second arc of the Percy Jackson the Olympian series. Let's see. I didn't start season 2 of Fallout or Maul at all on the list when I get round to them. Oh, never mind. I forgot there is a second season of Fallout to watch. Love Percy Jackson. Yeah, all of Rick Riordan books seem to share. Yeah, they share the universe, but I think what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna read uh Lightning Thief, watch the movie, talk about how they compare and contrast. Or just, I'm going to read the book, review it, watch the movie, review it, watch the first season of the TV show, review it, and then I'm going to talk about how different they are and how much the movie is not good. I've read and watched all of it. I have not read Kane Chronicles or Magnus Chase, but I have read all of Percy Jackson, but I'm going to go through and talk about it. And, I'm not going to do predictions at the end of the video because I know what's going to happen. I'm just going to talk about my opinions and what I like about it and all that. Because there is a lot of crossover. I did try to do a review, like not a review, like reaction to the trailer for season 2 when it dropped. It did okay. but a lot of the viewers kind of, like, people who commented just were kind of mean, and it kind of turned me off of doing Percy Jackson content, but I will give it another try. Let's see. Let's see. But I've only read Percy Jackson and Camp Half-Blood stuff. Are you counting Heroes of Olympus as part of the Percy Jackson, the movies? Good luck. Yes, I am counting Heroes of Olympus as part of Percy Jackson. So it's PJO, Heroes of Olympus, PJO Part 2, Trials of Apollo, and then Sun and Stars, Court of the Dead, and then there's another series coming out that's, I think, a trilogy that they just announced, that kind of continuation of one of the characters from the Sun and Stars series. And yeah, no, I know the movies aren't good. I know. The best part of the movies are Alexander Daddario, and that doesn't even save it. But those are some things that are going to be happening, and I will also probably start doing some Lord of the Rings stuff. I am not going to be the Lord of the Rings guy, but I do want to talk more about it. I do enjoy Lord of the Rings. I think it's a good universe, and, you know, for people who like Harry Potter, people who like Percy Jackson, people who like Dungeon Crawler Carl, guess what? You probably also like Lord of the Rings. So that's what I'm gonna do. More of the fantasy genre is what I'm gonna cover. I think I only did Percy's first Heroes book, and that was years ago. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna do the supplementary stuff, just because it's like $10 a book on Audible, and that's a lot of money to have to pay for it. So if I start making a lot of money doing this stuff, yeah, I'll go and buy all of them. It's an investment at that point. I actually really like the what? Oh, the poker face scene. Yeah. In the first movie, I know it's a guilty pleasure. Excited for Loader videos. Yeah. I don't know what I'm gonna do for Lord of the Rings. I will probably do more of a reaction through it, because I've only gone through it once. I've talked about this before. I'm very frustrated with my elementary school librarian. In 5th grade, I was just devouring books. Like, I'm back to that phase in my life where I'm devouring books. Like, I went through Dungeon Crawler Carl within a month, and probably could have gone through it faster. But I was devouring books in 5th grade, and I finished the Chronicles of Narnia and went to the library and said, I really like this series. Can you give me something like it? You know what she didn't suggest? The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings. I would have been on a very different trajectory, because I was okay with Harry Potter. There was only 4 books when I started reading. Like, the 5th book hadn't come out, the first movie came out. I was like, I read it, I was like, this is cool. This isn't my personality. If I had Lord of the Rings, that probably would have become my personality. I mean, I was 95 pounds until I turned 16. If that tells you anything. I probably would have very much related heavily to the hobbits. The tiny little guy who gets his butt whooped. Yeah. I would have led a very different life. I probably would have been way more into D&D than I am, which is very little. Like, I want to do D&D, but just don't have enough friends to do D&D. That's why I do this, so I can make friends and have conversations with people that have a lot in common with me. I couldn't get into the books, but I was young when I first tried. That was when I was reading Percy Jackson for the first time. I might have to give them a listen. Yeah, so I haven't even actually read them. I do a lot of listening. I have a slight vision disability. It's a lot easier for me to listen than it is to read. I'm an auditory learner as well. But if I'm making videos, I don't have a lot of time, because I do also work a 40-hour job. So the good thing about my 40-hour job is I can listen to books while I work. So I've listened to the original narrators on Audible. I have the Andy Serkis versions, and I want to listen to those. And that's what I'm going to probably do my review of, is talking about the Andy Serkis version and how much I like it. So that is what I'm going to be doing. But that's a long way down the road. I'm going to spend probably the next couple months doing Percy Jackson and maybe a little bit more Dungeon Crawler Carl, just because I have an idea for if I were to design a Dungeon Crawler Carl video game, how each level would be, because I would make each level different. Like, I know a lot of people are like, I want a Dungeon Crawler Carl game that's going to be like a battle royale. And it's like, I think a single player would be a lot of fun too. Let's see. I played one game of D&D ever. This was years ago. My character is still technically passed out drunk some tavern. Andy reads the audiobooks. I definitely have to listen. Yeah, he went through and did all 5 major books. So he did the trilogy, The Hobbit, and the Silmarillion. I have the trilogy and Hobbit. I do not have Silmarillion. So that is on my list to get on Audible. So yeah, that's basically it. But yeah, so look forward to all of that. Like, I will continue my Harry Potter content, and of course, once December hits, it's going to be chaos. It may just be all Harry Potter all the time. Like, it may be reaction videos. My schedule may change on how I do it, but that's what I'm here for. I'm gonna try to do my stream. I may, we're gonna see how we're gonna do the show, because I don't want to be the let me point out all the Easter egg kind of guy. I just like I may do a reaction and then like, hey, things that you should have paid attention to. So it may be two Harry Potter videos a week coming out at different times, because if it airs on Sunday nights, you may be getting a video on Monday morning. If I post a video on Monday morning, I'm not posting a video on Tuesday. So look forward to a change in schedules. We'll see. But for the next couple months, it's probably going to be Percy Jackson, Dungeon Crawler Carl, and then after season 1, we're probably going to get into Lord of the Rings. Andy does an incredible job with all Tolkien books he has narrated. Yeah. I mean, I've heard a little bit of Fellowship, because I do have the first, I do have 4 of the 5. But I haven't super got into it because I, needed a reason. That doesn't surprise me. He's an incredible talent. But that's gonna be it for me today. I appreciate the fact that every time I go to end a stream, I need to do these streams a lot later because you guys show up around 8 o'clock. And I start at 5:30. So yeah, that's it. Make sure to like this and subscribe to the channel so you can be notified when I do more live streams. I try to do them every other Sunday or Monday, depending on what my schedule is. I'm off of work Sundays and Mondays, so I usually stream one of those 2 days. But it also depends on what's going on. It's going to be a busy month this month, so if this is my only June stream, I hope you guys will come back for my July stream, but we'll see. It's 1:30 a.m. Thanks for hanging out. Have a good one. Yeah, you guys rock. I will see you in probably 2 weeks. But guess what? You get to see me at least twice a week for the next couple weeks. So we'll see you then. Have a good night.